Chapter 141 Leave and Love. Kazuhana Nutao was imprisoned, and before entering, Naruto directly beat him to half-death, so that he had no chance of escape. A few days later, accompanied by Naruto and assisted by Mitsuha, Koyuki quickly reorganized the Snow Country, and those forces that originally belonged to Kazuhana's raging waves fell to Koyuki on the day Kazuhana's raging waves were judged. This makes Naruto very satisfied. This is the person who knows the times. In the past few days, Naruto and the two also enjoyed the treatment of VIPs of a country in the country of snow. Tenten soaked Izumi, and there was a maid delivering meals. Jiraiya almost felt a little reluctant. On a snow-capped mountain behind the castle of Snow Country, the ground is covered with snow and ice, and flakes of snow are flying in the air. The footsteps of Naruto and Koyuki slowly stepped on the snow, printing deep and shallow footprints. Naruto, I'm fortunate to have you with me these past few days, otherwise I'll be bored to death. At this time, Koyuki, without the trouble of state affairs, felt as relaxed and comfortable as the snowflakes around him, almost a kind of it feels like I want to dance around Naruto. Naruto smiled slightly, didn't speak, just responded to her with a smile on his face. Koyuki pursed his lips and smiled, took his hand, and giggled, Naruto, let's build a snowman. In this weather in the Snow Country, as long as you don't move the snowman, it will never melt. Naruto nodded, and to be honest, when he came to the ninja world, he had never built a snowman before. So, the two immediately started working. Naruto was responsible for collecting ice and snow, designed by Koyuki, and soon, a snowman was made. Looking at the snowman, Naruto showed a knowing smile. At this time, Koyuki proposed to make another snowman, and then without waiting for Naruto to agree, he immediately started another snowman by himself. Two snowmen stood together, holding hands, and Koyuki couldn't help but go crazy. Of course Naruto knew what Koyuki was thinking, and he also deeply felt the beauty's tenderness, but when he thought about what he was going to tell her next, he couldn't help but sigh slightly. What's wrong, Naruto? Koyuki thought that Naruto was dissatisfied and couldn't help but ask. Naruto glanced at her, then looked at the two snowmen again, and after thinking for a while, finally looked into her eyes and said, Koyuki, I've been in this country of snow for several days, and you are sitting here too. I have taken the position of the name of the Snow Country, so today I plan to. However, before he could say goodbye, a green and cold jade pointer was placed on Naruto's lips, and Koyuki came up gently, with a smile on his face. Naruto, don't say this now, okay? I know, yes, now I just want you to accompany me to build a snowman and accompany me to see the snow scene in this snow country. Quote. Naruto stopped talking and let Koyuki's head rest on his shoulder. He looked at the distant scenery and thought to himself, Koyuki is so tender to him, he is really a little reluctant. However, you can't immerse yourself in this gentle village. He didn't see Koyuki leaning on his shoulder, crying quietly. It was the reluctance and concern before parting. Finally, Naruto and Jiraiya left the Snow Country. For Jiraiya, this is just a stop on the journey. For Naruto, here he took away a care and left a relationship. Koyuki, who was reluctant to part with tears in his eyes, and gave her some ninjutsu and ninja skills that he had sorted out for her to practice, and also said, the parting now is for the future. A more beautiful reunion. A few days later, the two of Naruto appeared in a town. As the weather turned colder, Naruto also added a white trench coat that Koyuki personally selected for him in the Snow Country. Hey, I really miss the days in the country of snow, it's so comfortable. Jiraiya said with emotion on the road. Naruto, I think the princess of the country of snow is very interesting to you, so you can go back and give it to you. It's good to be a concubine, so that you can go to the sky in one step. Naruto heard this, he couldn't help but glared at him. I still want to practice more. Haha, yes, you deserve to be my apprentice, your mind is firm enough. Jiraiya laughed and patted Naruto's shoulder in praise. Naruto shook his head and ignored him. At this moment, Jiraiya's eyes lit up, and suddenly said to Naruto, Naruto, I suddenly remembered something to do. You go to a hotel to rest first, I'll be there later. Naruto followed his gaze, but suddenly saw a figure. Jiraiya was staring at the man, and he couldn't help but be startled. Because the man has soft lavender hair, a small white paper flower on his head, and a large black trench coat on his body. He has a noble and cool temperament, and the woman has a very good figure, with the faint expression on her face. Purple eyeshadow, more elegant and peerless. However, what attracts Jiraiya is not her graceful figure, but because the two seem to know each other. This man is Conan. Naruto was secretly vigilant, knowing that Jiraiya didn't know that Conan was Akatsuki's white angel. And Conan's presence here is by no means a coincidence. Could it be that the undead duo reported to the organization when they went back, so they sent Conan to follow them in person? Conan's figure has disappeared from the street, and Jiraiya has also disappeared. It seems that he has followed. Naruto stood there for a while, but decided to follow him. Following Jiraiya's breath, Naruto soon found the two of them in a barbecue restaurant. At this time, he was surprised to find that the two were chatting happily. Conan was sitting opposite Jiraiya, with a sweet smile on his face, without the cold and arrogant temperament that Naruto had in mind. Conan, it's been nearly 30 years since we've been apart. How have you been in the past few years? Jiraiya sighed infinitely. Even though he was usually carefree, he couldn't help but have the urge to burst into tears now. Conan also said excitedly, Yes, Mr. Jiraiya, since we parted with you, we have missed you very much. Now we are all doing well, and everyone misses you very much. After hearing this, Jiraiya said emotionally, My teacher is really irresponsible. I should have brought you to Konoha in the first place. Naruto frowned as he listened to their conversation, his eyes fixed on Conan, his heart full of inquiry. Has the plot changed? Conan didn't join Akatsuki. At this moment, seeing Conan's excited look, he couldn't help thinking to himself. But he immediately rejected his idea. Akatsuki shouldn't change much, right? Chapter 142 Conan's Lurk. The next moment, Naruto walked up directly, interrupting the joy of the two of them reuniting, and asked Conan directly, Who are you? Suddenly seeing Naruto come in, Conan's eyes flashed a hint of displeasure, but he concealed the past very well, and introduced himself solemnly. My name is Conan, I'm a disciple of teacher Jiraiya, how about you? What's it called? Naruto could speak. Jiraiya introduced him. He is a disciple I just accepted, and he is very talented. Now his strength is unbelievable. Jiraiya's words were full of pride. Conan smiled slightly, then looked at Naruto with interest. Naruto frowned secretly, feeling more and more in his heart that she was an unkind person, but on his face he deliberately showed the appearance of just acquaintance with a bright smile. So it's senior sister Conan, please forgive my rudeness, this is for you. Apologize. As he said that, he poured a cup of tea and handed it to Conan. Conan took it. Naruto looked at her hand carefully, but found that she was not wearing the ring that represented the Akatsuki member logo. However, the Sharpie he saw a trace on her finger. That's the mark that only appears after wearing the ring for a long time. Sure enough, she's still Akatsuki's Conan, just disguised her identity and deliberately approached the two of them. It seems that she must be trying to take advantage of Jiraiya's lack of information and not knowing her identity to attack herself at close range. Naruto, who discovered this, became more vigilant in his heart. Looking at Conan's smile now, it feels very fake. Snort. Since you want to play with us, then I will play with you. Naruto sneered inwardly. At this time, Jiraiya, who was completely unaware, smiled happily. Conan, I didn't expect to meet you here this time. What are you going to do next? How can you stay with me as a master for a few days? Conan smiled slightly. Well, I'm very happy to meet you too. The next few days should let me do my best as a disciple. Jiraiya laughed when she heard it, and immediately took a sip from the wine glass, and ate a few mouthfuls of grilled meat. Seeing that Jiraiya was really happy in the dark, Naruto sighed inwardly. Conan, ah Conan, I really don't know if you are smiling or smirking when you see Master. Opposes Jiraiya regardless of any teacher-disciple relationship. I can't understand it in my heart, and I don't have a good impression of her. Why would a person who hopes for peace even forget the relationship between master and apprentice? What kind of scene does such a person hope for the so-called peace? Or was it because he didn't read the original book thoroughly and didn't understand Conan's state of mind? Next, a group of 3 found a hotel and stayed in, and then Jiraiya put Naruto aside and went to talk with his beautiful apprentice. Naruto guessed in his heart that she was afraid that her purpose was to deal with herself, and she would never deal with Jiraiya at the moment. If he was going to deal with Jiraiya, Akatsuki's ability over the years would have killed Jiraiya long ago. And he also believed that Conan and the others did not have any friendship with Jiraiya, otherwise they would not have killed him until Jiraiya rushed to the base camp at the end. Thinking of this, Naruto calmed down for a while, and after being alert, he began to practice, but he did not practice any advanced ninjutsu, but planned to further exercise his body to make his body more tenacious. This can prevent Conan from collecting ninjutsu information from himself, and also improve his taijutsu cultivation. Anyway, recently I am in the stage of puberty, and it is also a good choice to take advantage of this stage to train my body well. Moreover, he believed that Conan would not stay by Jiraiya's side for long. After all, Akatsuki's affairs could not be put down for too long, and once he made her unable to succeed for a long time, he would definitely leave to find another plan. If she really doesn't leave then, she will definitely find a timestamp to wear her. Thinking like this, Naruto started a threesome life with the attitude of playing with her. That night, when Naruto returned to the hotel, he asked Jiraiya about Conan. Jiraiya gladly told him how powerful she is now, how beautiful she is, and so on. Naruto will also train with Mrs. Conan tomorrow. Naruto secretly said, it really came. It seems that she is going to find out, but is it so easy for her to test out her own strength? The next day, the 3 left the town and embarked on a journey, with Conan naturally following. Jiraiya intends to make Conan and Naruto familiar with the brothers and sisters, so she walks far ahead. However, to Naruto's surprise, Conan, who was smiling happily in front of Jiraiya, actually ignored him when he had time to approach him, restoring the cold, arrogant and lonely image in his mind. In this regard, he is also happy to be at ease. Anyway, it is Conan who has plans for himself. When he knows her purpose, he just needs to pay attention. Jiraiya, who had been walking in front of him but silently watching the 2 behind him, couldn't help feeling a little depressed when he saw that the 2 of them didn't speak. He took the initiative to stop and say to the 2 of them for the sake of the relationship between the 2 of them. As my disciples, one is a female ninja who has been able to stand alone, and the other is a talented Konoha rookie. Master, I really want to see your competition. Why don't you just stay here? The terrain here is empty, just right for you to fight. Quote. Naruto secretly scolded Jiraiya for being troublesome, and looked at Conan calmly, only to see a glint in Conan's eyes, and said lightly, since it's your request, Teacher Jiraiya, then I will obey it. Naruto, what do you think? Naruto secretly said, he was waiting for him here. I secretly admire Conan as a ninja. His camouflage skills and patience are indeed very powerful. Of course Naruto wasn't afraid. He knew how powerful Conan was. He just had to deal with it a little bit. Even if he didn't use his full strength, he believed he could fool him. The next moment, he nodded with the same smile on his face, I'm fine. Okay, then I'll be a free referee for you guys, let's get started. Jiraiya walked over to Naruto and whispered, Naruto, don't be behind your senior sister, I'm optimistic about you. Naruto cut out, just watch it. As a result, the 2 stood still in the field, both looked at each other lightly, and the momentum of both sides continued to rise. Chapter 143 tried to no avail. Compared with Conan's secret pride in his heart at the moment, Naruto is very disdainful, thinking that he can deceive me with this camouflage technique. Naruto secretly said, "He is a transmigrator. How many kilograms do you have?" "My ninjutsu is paper escape. It's my original ninjutsu." Conan smiled faintly. "Don't underestimate this ninjutsu." Naruto smiled slightly. "Come on, Sister Conan." Conan's mouth twitched slightly, and her figure rushed forward. During the battle, she took off her windbreaker outside, showing her bumpy figure tightly wrapped in tights, which made her more attractive in sports. Naruto glanced hurriedly and saw that she was rushing at the speed of a normal jonin at the moment. He knew that she was not using all his strength, so he didn't bother to deal with it, but slowly raised his hand and gently slapped her fist. Grip. Snapped. Conan's hand was held, and a slender jade leg suddenly slammed towards him, and Naruto immediately turned short and avoided her whip leg. Conan couldn't hit a single blow. Her speed suddenly increased, and she suddenly stretched out her hands towards Naruto and pressed it. Stab it. Seeing Conan's attack being so sharp, Jiraiya on the side can't help but nodded secretly. It seems that Conan has really grown a lot over the years. However, the next moment Naruto's hand suddenly flashed light, and a kuwu was held in his hand, and then he quickly waved the paper flowers a few times, and suddenly there was a tinkling sound of metal clashing. The two quickly separated. Conan frowned secretly inwardly. He had already tried to escape, but he didn't expect that he would still use ordinary physical techniques to deal with him, which was too contempt for himself. She suddenly opened her mouth and said, "Naruto, let me see what abilities you, the talented guy that Mr. Jiraiya called you." Speaking, she finally showed a trace of strength, and she didn't see her hands in hand seal. Suddenly, countless pieces of paper flew up around her. In a moment, with her as the center, all the papers were flying within a dozen meters around her. Peace. Then, with a slight movement of her jade hand, those pieces of paper seemed to have spirituality, and all of a sudden they rushed towards Naruto. Jiraiya watched secretly in shock. He could see that each piece of paper had a strong cutting ability, equivalent to a wind blade. Originally, if Naruto was a Kaden fire-style ninja, he might not have to be afraid of her, but he knows that although Naruto has also learned a few Kaden fire-style ninjutsu, he has changed his wind attribute and has become a master. The attribute changes of his have not yet been learned, so the power of the other escape techniques he used is very limited. At this moment, realizing that Conan was forcing himself to use his trump card, Naruto sneered secretly. Of course he couldn't let her succeed, but he couldn't show no signs of it. I saw that he suddenly hand seal separated a shadow clone, and then the main body and the clone were hand seal at the same time. In an instant, two ninjutsus were formed. Futon, wind style, Shen Lan. Kaden, fire style, fire bomb. The next moment, a hurricane and a big fireball were sent out at the same time, and the two combined in midair, instantly turning into an extremely violent madness. Boom! The hot flame shot out in an instant, collided with the piece of paper, the two intersected, and suddenly made a crackling sound, and the piece of paper was burned by the flame. The flames had already rushed in front of her. At this time, Naruto stopped the chakra output and let the flames dissipate. "Senior Sister Conan, are you alright?" Naruto laughed. Conan frowned secretly, thinking that this guy is really strong. He mastered compound ninjutsu at a young age. Although he used it together with his clone, this is enough to show that he has reached the point of perfection as the master of shadow clone. However, Conan still didn't achieve her goal. From the battle to now, she only knew that Naruto would use compound ninjutsu, which was not enough. However, it is clear that she has lost. Continuing the comparison will only make the battle out of control, and then it will not end well. Thinking of this, Conan shook his head and said lightly, "I'm fine, Naruto, you are really amazing." Naruto shook his head and smiled. At this time, Jiraiya came over, looked at his two apprentices with great satisfaction, and laughed. "You are all very good, you can learn more in the future, and strive to surpass my master in the future." Conan nodded, looking very well behaved. Naruto frowned secretly when he saw her, and suddenly felt a disgust for her. A former apprentice, but now stealing information as a spy. regardless of any master-apprentice relationship, such a woman, is it still the gentle and kind Conan in the original book? Can the pain of war really make a person like this? Naruto entered a deep thought in his heart. That night, the three of them camped in the wild and slept. In the middle of the night, when Naruto got up to take a nap, he saw a faint glow in Conan's tent. Is she contacting Akatsuki at the moment? Or are you writing secret information? With this thought in mind, Naruto sneaked over with his lightest movements, held his breath, hid chakra, and completely isolated his breath. Through a gap between the tents, he saw the scene inside. In the faint candlelight, Conan was bowing his head, wearing only a light pajamas, his graceful figure showing amazing charm in the swaying firelight. However, at this time, a faint sadness flashed in her eyes, and she was fascinated by the candlelight in front of her, as if she was feeling something. After a long time, she sighed faintly, blew out the light, and fell asleep. Naruto couldn't help but stun for a moment, but he didn't expect the situation to be unexpected. Why is she sad? Sigh for what? Naruto returned to his tent and gradually fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, when Naruto woke up, he saw Conan cooking breakfast obediently and serving porridge to Jiraiya. Naruto shook his head secretly. Conan, let me see what other waves you can make. After seeing Naruto get up, Conan immediately filled Naruto with a bowl of porridge and handed it to him. The gentle senior sister's appearance made Naruto feel in a trance for a moment. Which one is the real one? Her. No wonder that Jiraiya can't notice the difference at all now. It can only be said that Conan's disguise is too powerful. Naruto took the porridge and drank it slowly, thinking to himself, it is not a solution for him to be passive all the time. It seems that he has to find an opportunity to let her retreat. Chapter 144 Conan leaves. After several days in a row, Conan was still unable to dig up any useful information from Naruto, which made her feel that she had no idea where to start, who had planned to find Naruto's weaknesses from the very beginning. In the past few days, the beard on Naruto's face has grown again. When he looked in the mirror, he couldn't help but think of the princess who was far away in the country of snow, and the way she cut his beard playfully, and the expression on his face was revealed. A knowing smile. Time is pressing, there are still less than 3 years left, and I must step up to improve my strength. Now that my own cultivation has entered a bottleneck, it seems that it is time to explore new fields. Conan, I can't accompany you to continue acting, it seems that you have to leave. Naruto said secretly. In the market town, Jiraiya went to soak in Izumi, and Conan and Naruto stayed in their own rooms. Naruto took a deep breath and knocked on Conan's door. Senior sister Conan, can I come in? Naruto shouted. No echo. Naruto thought about it for a while. Anyway, he went in and turned his face, so he opened the door without hesitation and walked in. And just at this moment, Conan's voice came out, come on, wait. At the same time, the door of the bathroom just opened, and Conan walked out from the inside, without any strands on his body. Because she was going to go to bed and put on her clothes before opening the door, but she didn't expect Naruto to come in. Naruto immediately felt that something was wrong, but his eyes were too late to avoid it, and he truly captured the beautiful scenery in front of him. The halo of light purple hair is still dripping with crystal water droplets. Those slender, jade-like legs were perfect, standing straight in front of Naruto, as well as the mysterious triangle area, that faint moist herb. For a moment, Naruto had a feeling of blood rushing to his forehead. I just felt that my whole body was boiling. Conan, senior sister, Naruto called out, but didn't turn his head, still staring straight at her. Until then, Conan exclaimed, Naruto, why did you come in? Get me out. A bang, Conan ducked back into the bathroom and closed the door, clutching the sensitive parts of his body with both hands, a wet yuhi on his face. Damn it, his body was actually seen by him. This is how to do. However, he is still just a child, so he probably doesn't understand this. Conan has completely lost the calmness of one of the major leaders of the organization, and his heart is in chaos, and he doesn't know what to do. After a long time, Conan called out, "Naruto, are you still there?" "Well, I'm here." Naruto's voice startled Conan. "This guy, why hasn't he left yet?" "Asshole. Why haven't you left yet?" Conan said coldly. "I have something to do." "Forget it, I'd better go," Naruto said halfway through, shook his head and left the room. Originally he wanted to come and expose her directly, but he didn't expect such an embarrassing scene, which led to the fact that he had just cultivated the good seriousness suddenly disappeared. It looks like it's only a few days away. After Naruto left, Conan came out and got dressed. Until evening, Jiraiya had not come back. Naruto was practicing chakra in the room. Conan suddenly walked in. "Senior sister Conan, is something wrong?" Naruto asked strangely. "Naruto, tell Jiraiya-sensei later, I'm leaving," Conan came in and said suddenly. "Huh?" Naruto was slightly startled and said, "Why do you have to leave in such a hurry?" Looking at Naruto, a trace of unwillingness flashed in Conan's eyes. So far, he didn't have any of the weaknesses of the master, but he was accidentally blinded by him. It's just that the organization suddenly had to deal with urgent matters, so this time the task had to be abandoned. "I've been out for a long time, and everyone else is anxious. Anyway, I've met Mr. Jiraiya now, and I recognize you as a junior. I'll come to Konoha next time to see you." Conan smiled slightly, and turned to Naruto. "Farewell." Although Naruto felt that her departure was a bit sudden, he still wanted her to leave, so that he could devote himself to cultivation. "Okay, then I wish you a smooth journey, senior sister." Naruto sent her out of the room, and when she saw her turn around and leave quickly, he returned to the room. That night, when Jiraiya came back, Naruto told him about Conan's departure, and he couldn't help sighing, blaming her for leaving without saying goodbye to his master. Naruto knew that Conan's trial of himself this time was a failure, and that Akatsuki's affairs were urgent, and it was impossible for her to stay here for a long time all the time. The next day, there were only 2 Naruto left on the road. These days, Naruto has mastered some of the enchantment techniques and sealing techniques. Next, at Naruto's request, Jiraiya finally let him start the practice of Mount Myoboku Sage Art. After Naruto prepared some necessary daily necessities and food, he channeled a toad and entered the fairyland of Mount Myoboku with Jiraiya. Jiraiya first brought Naruto to Immortal Big Toad and asked him to teach Naruto about sage art. Naruto was in this picturesque place, and he was slightly excited when he saw the Big Toad Immortal who was there with the old god. To Immortal Big Toad, Immortals Fukasaku and Shima were also on the list, and the arrival of Jiraiya made them very happy. "Little Jiraiya, I have long heard that Naruto is very good, why did you bring him in now?" Fukasaku asked. Jiraiya smiled and said, "Some time ago, he was still practicing other ninjutsu. Recently, he felt that it was almost the same, so he brought him here. I think it took me a lot of time to learn sage art. I hope this time in the 2 immortals under the guidance, Naruto can surpass my teacher, ha ha ha." Quote. Then, Jiraiya thought about Immortal Big Toad and said, "Immortal Big Toad, please make a prediction for Naruto's future destiny, maybe he is the son of prophecy I am looking for." "Ah, who is talking over there?" Big Toad squinted his eyes, but he seemed to be unable to find where Jiraiya was. Naruto was speechless, not sure if this old toad was pretending or real. Dizziness. "I said Big Toad Immortal, I'm Jiraiya, I'm here." Jiraiya shouted helplessly. Oh, it turned out to be little Jiraiya. Then the Big Toad Immortal leaned down slightly, opened his turbid eyes, and looked at Jiraiya. "Why, talking to the Big Toad Fairy is still so tiring," Jiraiya secretly murmured. Then he turned his head to Naruto and said to him, "Come and see the Great Toad Immortal." Chapter 145 Practice Sage Art. Naruto took a step forward, raised his head and looked at the Big Toad Immortal without being humble or arrogant. He looked directly into his eyes and said with a smile, "I have seen the Big Toad Immortal. I am Uzumaki Naruto, please take care of me in the future. An imperceptible light flashed in the eyes of the big-toed immortal, and he looked at Naruto carefully for a while, and then he leaned back on the big chair lazily and nodded. Well, little Jiraiya, this little guy is not bad. Wait, I'll do the math for him. Then, the big-toed immortal lowered his head, as if he was out of the world, while Fukasaku, Shima, and Jiraiya waited solemnly for the end of the big toad's prophecy. Naruto is very curious about this prophecy, but he also knows that it is not a field that he can get involved in, so he quietly waits for the end of his prophecy. I don't know how long it has passed, when Immortal Big Toad suddenly yawned and came back to his senses. Ah, I'm sorry, I fell asleep just now. Jiraiya and others couldn't help sweating profusely. Immortal Big Toad, please be more serious. Immortal Zima reminded. Immortal Big Toad moved his mouth a few times, then nodded and said, well, I actually saw his future just now, but Naruto's future is really incomprehensible to me. What's wrong? Is there any problem, Immortal Big Toad? Immortal Fukasaku asked suspiciously. Immortal Big Toad was silent for a while, then glanced at Naruto again, and said slowly, there are countless possibilities for his future, and even one of them is that he will leave this world. What? Could it be that Naruto will encounter death? Jiraiya couldn't help but be surprised. Well, this can't be said. It seems that in the near future, he will reach a level that is beyond the reach of ordinary people. It is not death, but detachment. After that, even I can't predict. Immortal Big Toad said with deep meaning, and at the same time was interested in Naruto. Transcendence. Jiraiya was a little puzzled, and after thinking about it, she still couldn't understand what the Great Toad Immortal said, so she could only say, the Great Toad Immortal, is Naruto the son of prophecy I'm looking for? Well, Shao Naruto, he does have the possibility of becoming the son of prophecy, but due to the uncertainty of his future, I can't be sure that he is the one who will lead the ninja world to peace, but he is the one I have met. The guy who is most likely to become the son of prophecy. After the Big Toad Fairy answered, he fell asleep again. Although this has not been confirmed yet, it is still inseparable. It seems that Naruto is the son of prophecy. Jiraiya secretly thought. The two immortals Fukasaku and Shima said, little Jiraiya, the Big Toad Immortal is tired, now let's take Shao Naruto to practice. Jiraiya nodded, and several people left here and came to the place where Mount Myoboku practiced sage art. After Naruto learned about his own prophecy, he kept thinking deeply until he came to the Toad Oil Waterfall, and then he came back to his senses. And then the two immortals Shenzuo and Shima began to teach the basic knowledge of sage art. These Naruto have a general understanding, but they are not clear about some of the details. After listening to the words of the two, he immediately raised a few key questions, which made the two immortals greatly admire, and sighed that Naruto was countless times stronger than Jiraiya back then. Jiraiya watched in amazement and relief. Okay, Naruto, you have a general understanding of the method, now you can try it to see if you can absorb the natural energy. Immortal Fukasaku said. Naruto nodded, sat down with his knees crossed, his mind entered a state of ecstasy, and he began to slowly feel the energy in the surrounding space. After receiving the guidance of the two immortals, I suddenly had some enlightenment. However, Naruto sat on the spot for a long time without any movement, which made him a little embarrassed. He thought he could absorb the natural energy, but he found that the natural energy in the outside world was very messy. When absorbing it, the natural energies belonging to the curse mark in the body will suddenly react, and then desperately resist and refuse the entry of these energies. This made him very puzzled, because he knew that he was not incapable of absorbing the natural energy from the outside world. He thought that when he was in Itachi's Tsukuyomi space, he suddenly realized the natural energy and successfully absorbed it, although it was only for a moment, but he also successfully cracked the powerful demonic illusion. He always thought that absorbing the natural energy was his own perception, but this time he had already realized it, but he couldn't absorb it, which made him feel helpless for a while. Jiraiya and the others didn't know about Naruto and thought he couldn't feel the natural energy at all. Immortal Zima said, it seems that this is still a bit urgent. I think it is better to use toad oil to help him absorb natural energy first. Well, let him experience the feeling of absorbing natural energy first, and then do specific training, and he can enter Sage mode on his own in the next days. Fukasaku said with conviction. So, the next moment, the three of them asked Naruto to smear toad oil on his shirtless shirt, and then sat down and watched him by immortal Fukasaku, and let him absorb the natural energy forcibly. After applying toad oil, Naruto immediately felt an incomparably huge energy pouring into his body. This energy was very powerful, and the immortal power of the curse immortal in his body immediately counterattacked. In an instant, two natural forces were in his body. There was a violent blow in the body. I saw that half of Naruto's body exuded a faint golden light, and the other half was covered with pimples. The two immortals, Fukasaku and Shima, were amazed when they saw it, and they looked at each other and exclaimed, "What's going on? Why is Naruto able to produce such a pure power of nature?" Seeing this, Jiraiya frowned. This is a spell mark, a spell developed by Orochimaru that can utilize the power of nature. Orochimaru. No wonder. Immortal Fukasaku suddenly sighed and said to Jiraiya, "It seems that Naruto is no longer suitable for cultivating Mount Myoboku's sage art." Huh. Jiraiya was startled. I have already felt this sage art chakra from the White Snake Immortal. This is the sage art lineage belonging to Raichi Cave, which is somewhat different from the Mount Myoboku sage art lineage of my Toad family. I see Naruto's current situation. The immortal powers are fighting each other. We must stop him from continuing to practice. Hey, it's a pity. Just when Fukasaku was about to interrupt Naruto's practice, Naruto's body suddenly burst out with a yuhi-colored evil chakra. With a bang, at the next moment, the yuhi-colored chakra suddenly covered his body, forcing the two immortal forces in Naruto back. Chapter 146 4 Generations of Inheritance. The sudden appearance of Yuhi's evil chakra immediately shocked Jiraiya and others. "Kyubi, Nine Tails chakra," Immortal Fukasaku whispered. "This is indeed Kyubi, Nine Tails chakra," Jiraiya said. "No, we have to help him suppress it. Prepare for battle." "Wait, I see that Naruto is fighting against this force at the moment, let's not act rashly." Immortal Fukasaku waved. At this time, as Fukasaku said, the two sage art chakras in Naruto's body and the huge power of that Kyubi, Nine Tails all emerged in Naruto's body meridians. These three extremely powerful energies, it was like three robbers, all struggling for dominance. But after a while, Kyubi, Nine Tails chakra had firmly occupied Naruto's meridians and became dominant. At this time, in Naruto's consciousness space, Kyubi, Nine Tails was laughing wildly. "Kid, I never imagined that I would get such a good opportunity. Today you are dead." Kyubi, Nine Tails slammed the sealed iron cage, causing the entire space to vibrate slightly. And Naruto stood in front of the iron cage, tightly wrapped in a yuhi-colored chakra escaping from Kyubi, Nine Tails. It's just that he is trying to gather that part of his own chakra to resist. Naruto never imagined that if he failed to practice sage art, he would actually attract two energies to fight fiercely in his body, and, most importantly, under the impact of these two energies, the seal in his body loosened. Kyubi, Nine Tails, eager to break the seal, finally has a chance. Outside the consciousness space, the yuhi-colored chakra on Naruto's body became stronger and stronger, and in an instant, 4 chakra tails appeared behind Naruto. Moreover, chakra is still strengthening, and the number of tails is increasing. 5, 6, 7, 8. In a blink of an eye, Naruto had 8 chakra tails behind him. And his body has also been burned to pieces by this chakra, and it has become Yuhi. In the consciousness space, Naruto's own chakra is getting weaker and weaker, and it is more and more difficult to resist the huge power of Kyubi, Nine Tails. Ha ha ha, the old man can finally come out. The damn seal has locked me up for more than 10 years. After going out, I must take revenge on you humans. Kyubi, Nine Tails yelled. The chakra became more and more violent. The seal on the big iron gate was about to shatter immediately. At this moment, a tall figure suddenly appeared in front of Naruto, before the big iron prison. The fourth generation of Hokage. Kyuubi, Ninetales, suddenly exclaimed. Long time no see, Kyuubi, Ninetales, you are still so irritable. The person who appeared was the fourth generation, Naruto's father. I saw that he had a few seals on his hands, and he stretched out his hand and pressed it on the seal. The power was injected, and the surging chakra of Kyuubi, Ninetales, was immediately forced back into the seal. The chakra on Naruto receded, and he couldn't help breathing heavily. He raised his head and looked at the figure in front of him. 4 generations of Hokage. Quote. Naruto. The expression on Namikaze Minato's face was a mixture of relief and surprise. It's been the first time since we met. I didn't expect you to be so big in a blink of an eye. Naruto's mood is a bit complicated at the moment, because for a long time, he has a faint feeling that he doesn't want to see him, because he is a transmigrator, replacing Naruto's soul, which makes him a little afraid to face Minato, and also bear it. Can't afford Minato's loving gaze. But at this moment, he had to face him. Naruto, why don't you speak? Hehe, can't you see that I'm your father? Minato saw Naruto's silent expression, thought he didn't know he was his father, and smiled helplessly. Look. Ly-Sandai didn't tell you everything. Naruto continued to remain silent, sighing inwardly. Minato sighed slightly. Hey, it's my father's irresponsibility to leave you alone, even if you blame me now. It's not surprising that I can see you again this time with the only chakra left. I really very happy. Phew, damn 4 generations of Hokage. Why are you so haunted? Kyuubi, Ninetales, yelled after the big iron prison. Some kind of let me out, let's fight again. Minato frowned, glanced at Kyuubi, Ninetales, shook his head and said, it's too noisy here, let's change place. After he finished speaking, he snapped his fingers, and the surroundings immediately turned into a space full of warm tones. Naruto, my time is running out. I appear now because of the loosening of the seal of Kyuubi, Ninetales, when I sealed my chakra in your body. When Kyuubi, Ninetales, chakra overflowed into when I have 8 tails, I will come out to repair a seal. I have consumed most of my chakra just now, so let's make a long story short. Minato put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and said with a serious look. Next, he told the information and guesses about the masked man, and after asking Naruto to be more careful with him in the future, he breathed a sigh of relief and said reluctantly, Naruto, it doesn't matter if you forgive or not. Dad, I have no regrets if I can see you again. You will have to go on your own in the future. I will help you one last time. The last chakra left will be given as a birthday present. You. After saying that, Minato's figure suddenly turned into a ray of light, and disappeared into Naruto's body in an instant. Naruto's body trembled slightly, and suddenly he felt a large stream of information pouring into his mind. At a glance, he couldn't help but froze. The art of Hiraishin. Time and space enchantment technique. Hiraishin's second paragraph, and the theoretical study of the third paragraph. There are also some follow-up upgrade studies of Rasengan, plus some special seals, the 8 trigrams seal, the 4 elephant seal, and even the ghoul seal. These high-end sealing techniques belonging to the Uzumaki family, as well as the results of his own research on time-space ninjutsu, were all converted into information and passed on to Naruto. After a long time, Naruto absorbed the information. At this time, the 2 turbulent immortal forces in the body had already subsided, and Kyuubi, Ninetales, chakra could no longer penetrate into Naruto's body. Jiraiya, Fukasaku, and Shima watched Naruto sitting in the same place. The chakra that belonged to Kyuubi, Ninetales, suddenly disappeared, and his body returned to its original state. At this time, Naruto finally woke up. The totem mortal power in his body had disappeared, and the curse mark had shrunk back. There is also an indescribable ease. And, most importantly, Minato's appearance brought him the Hiraishin technique and the advanced time-space ninjutsu he had always dreamed of. Thinking that he didn't even call him dad at that time, a faint sense of guilt emerged spontaneously. Although Minato doesn't know that his soul is no longer his son, everything he does is for the sake of his son. Now, as a traveler, he has accepted all the favors that belong to him. No matter how much he owes him a big favor. Chapter 147. The Exploration of Sage Art. Obtained the art of Hiraishin, soon fell into practice again. Because he could not practice the sage art of Mount Myoboku, he spent most of his energy on the study of the art of Hiraishin for the time being. I have to say that this is a ninjutsu that is extremely pervert. When you practice it to the ultimate, you can be invincible just by that elusive speed. If you use it well, you can defeat the weak. Naruto divided dozens of shadow clones and devoted himself to Hiraishin's practice wholeheartedly. As for sage art, he could only put it aside when he had no solution for a while. In a blink of an eye, more than a month has passed, and Naruto has been going back and forth between Mount Myoboku and the ninja world. With the technique of Hiraishin, he can now go back and forth between Mount Myoboku anytime, anywhere. When Jiraiya saw that Naruto had learned the art of Hiraishin in such a short period of time, he couldn't help but envy, but Minato also taught himself the art of Hiraishin, but he had no talent in this area. Until now, when Jiraiya saw Hiraishin again, she couldn't help but sigh. On this day, when Naruto was practicing the art of Hiraishin at Mount Myoboku, two immortals, Fukasaku and Shima, came to him. Naruto stopped cultivating and came to the two of them, but he heard Fukasaku suddenly say, "Little Naruto, through my understanding, the power of the curse mark in your body now belongs to the lineage of the White Snake Immortal, and our Toad clan. There are some differences in sage art. Since you can no longer practice Toad sage art, then go to Raichi Cave to find the White Snake Immortal and learn their sage art." Quote. Naruto couldn't help but stunned. The White Snake Fairy of Raichi Cave. Well, but you have to pay attention. Don't let them know that you are related to our Mount Myoboku, otherwise they will never let you practice sage art. There were some conflicts between Raichi Cave and our Mount Myoboku many years ago, Shenzuo nodded. At this moment, Jiraiya's expression changed and he shouted, "I'm afraid it's not enough anymore. That guy One Snake has seen Naruto psychic out toads, and he is a member of Raichi Cave." Quote. It's not easy to handle. Immortal Shensaku frowned and said, "Well, I'll ask Immortal Big Toad again to see if he can solve your problem." "Well, then I'll trouble you." Naruto nodded in thanks. It didn't take long for Immortal Fukusuo to return, but the expression on his face was obviously not very optimistic. Seeing this, Naruto has understood. It seems that the Big Toad Fairy has nothing to do. Immortal Fukusaku stepped forward and said, "Little Naruto, I asked Immortal Big Toad just now. Although he didn't give me a solution, he asked me to bring you a sentence." "Huh, what are you talking about?" Naruto couldn't help but cheer up. He said that sage art has the same root and the same origin, and those who practice sage art lie in a heart that understands nature. Sage art is of the same origin, and understands nature. Hearing this, Naruto couldn't help but fall into deep thought. At this time, Immortal Zima suddenly said, "Little Naruto, in fact, there is a legend circulating in our Mount Myoboku that the Immortal Big Toad, as well as Immortal White Snake and Immortal Toad, were all once disciples of Immortal Six Paths. At the beginning, the Six Paths Immortals gave the theoretical system of sage art to several immortals. Through the efforts of Dottoed Immortals and others, their respective sage art systems have not been formed until now. Although this has been handed down for thousands of years, but I think this also makes sense. Maybe, Naruto, you can cultivate your own sage art with this." Quote. Naruto was shocked. Your own sage art? Yes. Sage art is nothing more than absorbing natural energy and using the power of nature to strengthen itself. Why do you have to be obsessed with the teaching of others? Since Mount Myoboku's sage art is not suitable for self-cultivation, then go find another channel that can utilize the power of nature. If only I could find the power I felt in Itachi's Tsukuyomi space. Although the powerful feeling at that time was only for a moment, it was enough to make him feel the power of that power. Definitely better than Mount Myoboku and Raichi Cave's sage art. In the following days, Naruto stayed at Mount Myoboku, while studying the art that the 4 generations left to himself, while tentatively studying sage art. In the dull practice, in a blink of an eye, another 3 months have passed. Naruto has preliminarily sorted out the ninjutsu that the 4 generations left to him. The first stage of Hiraishin's art has been completed, and it has been able to teleport with people. The next step is the second stage of cultivation, teleporting yourself to the edge of the coordinates in motion. At the same time, he has also mastered the basic timespace enchantment, using the timespace enchantment to transfer objects, but he is not proficient and needs more practice. As for other aspects of the spell information, he has no time to study it, but it is only a matter of time. Moreover, the continuous practice during this period has also made Naruto's own chakra stronger. Since that time when Kyuubi, Ninetales, broke through the seal, his meridian system has become more tenacious and his physical fitness has also greatly improved. Now Naruto's strength, even without the blessing of the immortal power of the spell seal, he is no longer afraid of Kage-level powerhouses. If the immortal power of the spell seal is added, he believes that even if it is Jiraiya in sage mode, he can also be with him. A fight. In addition to the maneuverability of Hiraishin's technique, Naruto's strength is enough to stand on his own, and basically no one in Konoha can compare with him. On this day, Naruto tried his hard work on sage art to no avail, and finally decided to go out and find other solutions. At present, the only place where Naruto can find a solution is Raichi Cave. Although the possibility of success is not high, he still decided to go try your luck. Saying goodbye to Fukasaku and Shima from Mount Myoboku, he and Jiraiya split up to find Orochimaru's whereabouts. This is unreasonable for Jiraiya. He has always wanted to persuade this friend back. Although he committed unforgivable sins, Jiraiya actually hopes that he can abandon evil and follow good. Naruto proposed to go take the initiative to find Orochimaru. He immediately agreed, and also provided him with a lot of information. Because of the Hiraishin technique, Jiraiya doesn't have to worry about Naruto's safety, and after hiding a Hiraishin kunai on her body, she begins her journey to find Orochimaru. The direction he was going was the land of fields, where the Otogakure village of Orochimaru was located. And Naruto set off by following another clue provided by Jiraiya, and the target is the southern secret place where Karen is located. It is said that there are all Orochimaru detaining the failed experiments due to the research of the spell. Karen, who had a relationship in the Forest of Death. I wonder if she is there now. Chapter 148 Threat to Orochimaru. A few days later, the location of the southern secret house. The dark dungeon. Orochimaru and Kabuto walked through the doors of the prison where the test items were held, and looked blankly at the people who were screaming in the prison. The two kept walking through a long corridor, and when they came to the end, they opened an iron door with several large locks. Chango, Orochimaru-sama has come to see you. Kabuto took the lead and said. In the room, Changwoo's hands and feet were all tied with black iron chains with huge iron balls attached to them. The arrival of the two of Orochimaru made him raise his head. Animal nature, so he turned to Orochimaru and asked him to help, and Orochimaru also studied the curse from him. And this time, Orochimaru came here to further study the spell mark, because Naruto's spell mark state is completely different from that of Shigego and others. Not only does it not change his body shape, but it is also stronger than the general spell mark state. This gave him the idea to explore. Kabuto, Orochimaru, has he found a way to suppress that power in me? Shigego asked indifferently. Kabuto's eyes flashed, and he smiled. We are working hard, and we will always find a way. Now, please cooperate with us in our experiment. Shigeo nodded, stood up and walked out. At this moment, he suddenly asked, I heard that Kimimaro died. Orochimaru paused slightly, nodded, and said plainly, well, he was killed by Uzumaki Naruto. Changwoo was stunned for a moment, and suddenly he felt the violent power surge up in his body, and shouted, go away. Suddenly, with a loud bang, a powerful chakra aura erupted from Changwoo's body, and the two of Orochimaru were shocked and immediately retreated to the side. With the strength of Kabuto and Orochimaru, there is no need to be afraid of him, but it takes a lot of effort to solve his rampage at the moment, so the two had to back away and wait for his violent force to dissipate. In the underground passage, Shigego spotted Orochimaru and Kabuto and rushed towards them. The two of Orochimaru didn't want to fight, and immediately retreated to the ground outside the secret room. Boom boom boom. The sound of explosions kept coming. When Naruto came to the secret place, he happened to see Orochimaru and Kabuto burrowing out of the entrance of the secret place in embarrassment, and then Chongo, who was in the state of the three curse marks, rushed out. Facing the two there was a heavy bombardment. However, judging from the strength of Kabuto and Orochimaru, although Shigego burst into a strong momentum, he still couldn't hurt them. It's just that the two of Orochimaru looked a little embarrassed for a while. At this time, Naruto immediately chose to hide his figure. When the power of Chongo's curse imprint passed, he didn't want to go out and become the target of the curse imprint for him to fight. Although he was not afraid of him, he didn't want to fall into a rage for no reason. Guy fighting. After a while, Chongo's strength was exhausted, he stopped moving, and stood on the spot gasping for breath. The two of Orochimaru were just about to go up, but Naruto suddenly jumped out and appeared behind Shigego. Uzumaki Naruto. Kabuto's face was startled, and seeing Naruto's presence here surprised him, and Orochimaru couldn't help but be taken aback. However, compared to Kabuto's shock, Orochimaru seemed much calmer, seeing Naruto actually appearing behind Shigego, as if he wanted to hold Shigego hostage. An interested smile suddenly appeared on his face. Uzumaki Naruto, I can't believe it. You will be here, what do you want to do? After the last Seijutsu incident, Orochimaru paid more attention to Naruto. This guy who had the ability to challenge himself at a young age and let his plan that he thought was foolproof was thwarted by this, he no longer regarded him as a junior, but as an equal opponent. Orochimaru, long time no see. Naruto took the initiative to look for someone this time. Of course he couldn't speak ill of him when he went up. He laughed, I'm here to make an exchange with you, how about that? Huh, swap. Orochimaru's eyes flashed coldly, but he saw Naruto's kunai was already tucked into Shigego's neck. Are you threatening me? Orochimaru narrowed his eyes and said slowly, his tone full of murderous intent. How dare this kid dare to use Changwu to threaten himself? At this time, when Shigego, who was already exhausted, heard that it was Uzumaki Naruto, the murderer who killed Kimimaro, his whole body suddenly shook, and his dry power showed signs of erupting again. You are Uzumaki Naruto, Shigego yelled, punching him behind him. Naruto smiled slightly, and before he could turn around, he pressed his arm on his shoulder, and at the same time, the power of the curse mark on his body was slightly released, which immediately shocked him to the spot, unable to move. You'd better be honest and don't move, I won't hurt you. Naruto whispered to him. But Kiba gnashing his teeth and shouted, you actually have the ability to kill Kimimaro, I must fight you. Let's talk about revenge later, now you are my captive. Naruto smiled and looked at Orochimaru again, how is it? Orochimaru, do you agree? Orochimaru's expression was indifferent, but he was already very angry in his heart. It was the first time for him to be threatened like this, and it was also threatened by a teenage kid. I didn't expect this kid to be so despicable, to dare to threaten himself as Sannin so much. Naruto felt somber in his heart. In his past life, he often saw Orochimaru's calm demeanor that he was in control of everything, but now he is threatened by himself and can't do anything about it. That flickering expression is really beautiful. Kabuto, who was on the side, saw that Orochimaru was silent, and knew that he was actually in a dilemma. On the one hand, he took care of his own face, and on the other hand, he was an important person, so he stepped forward and said, Naruto, even if you want exchange, then the conditions of the exchange must be stated. Otherwise, this transaction cannot be negotiated at all. Naruto listened, smiled slightly, and said, well, actually, this request is not too much, there is no loss for you at all. Oh, say it. Orochimaru asked with interest. Take me to Raichi Cave. Naruto took a deep breath and said lightly. How did you know about the existence of Raichi Cave? Orochimaru couldn't help but look surprised. Kabuto, who was beside him, had heard of Raichi Cave for the first time and was curious. Raichi Cave had never even been heard of himself. Think this kid knows so much. I don't care how I know, you can say whether you agree or not. Naruto continued. He. Uzumaki Naruto, I didn't expect you to know so much, but you have learned so many secrets at such a young age. I'm really becoming more and more curious about you. Orochimaru froze for a while, but smiled instead of anger said, it seems that you are here for the curse mark in your body. Since that's the case, I'll take you in. Chapter 149 White Snake Immortal. Naruto didn't expect Orochimaru to be so straightforward and promised himself, which is very unreasonable in his opinion. Orochimaru is not so easy to get along with. With his character, he will definitely inadvertently sway him. Thinking of this, Naruto was secretly vigilant. He smiled and said, Orochimaru, then take me to Raichi Cave, it's not too late. Orochimaru smiled hee. Wait a minute Naruto-kun, since I have promised you, you should let go of Shigego too, right? Naruto nodded and Yin let go of him. Orochimaru gave Kabuto a wink, and Kabuto understood and left the place immediately with Shigego. Only Naruto and Orochimaru were left standing face to face. Okay, can we start now? Naruto said lightly. He was not worried that Orochimaru would go back on his words, since he promised so simply. He must have something in his heart, not to escape, otherwise it would not be Orochimaru. Although I promised to take you to Raichi Cave, the specific method of entry is still up to you. This is my blood. You can use it to summon 10,000 snakes. Whether you can let him take you to Raichi Cave is up to you. Orochimaru threw out a small bottle containing a blood sample. Naruto reached out and took it, opened the lid, dipped it with his hand, and started hand seal. Hi, Shu, Yu, Shen, Wei. Psychic art. Naruto quickly hand seal, his palm slammed on the ground, a bang, a puff of white smoke rose, Orochimaru backed away, a huge snake appeared in the field, and Naruto stood on top of his head. Hey, Orochimaru, what's the matter with you calling me out? The last time the injury hasn't healed yet, you are still calling me out. You bastard. Wan Shi immediately called out as soon as she saw Orochimaru in sight. Wan Snake, it's not me who summoned you. It's the little devil on your head. Orochimaru said lightly. Wan Shi was stunned for a moment, only then did he realize Naruto standing above his head, and he couldn't help but burst into flames. Stinky boy, it's you. Why did you summon me? Do you want me to be eaten? Naruto smiled slightly, and a flash of light flashed in his mind after hearing what he said, and suddenly said, yes, if you have the ability, you can eat me. Huh, are you looking for death? Wan Shi didn't care about anything. Naruto didn't have a contract with him, so eating him would have no effect at all. After Naruto said that, Wan Shi thought his head was burnt out, haha. With a smile, he raised his head, threw Naruto into the air, opened his mouth wide, and swallowed Naruto all at once. Boy, you brought this on your own. Wan Shi murmured in satisfaction after swallowing Naruto. And Orochimaru on the side frowned secretly, this idiot Wan Snake, so easy to fall into other people's tricks. Originally, he thought that with Wan Shi's character, Naruto would never be able to convince him. He would fight at most one battle, but he didn't expect that he would be used by Naruto when he met Wan Shi's lack of heart. Orochimaru, I'm back, don't call me out again next time. Satisfied after the snake ate Naruto, he glanced at Orochimaru and disappeared with a bang. HMPH, it's not so easy to get in at Raichi Cave. It won't be so easy to get out then, Naruto Uzumaki, this time you've miscalculated, and you won't be able to fly with your wings. Orochimaru stood in the original the ground, with a gloomy expression on his face, muttered to himself. Raichi Cave along with Wan Snake. As the name suggests, Raichi Cave is located in a huge cave, but the size of this cave is simply unimaginable. After a slap in the stomach made him spit himself out, the scene he saw made him stunned for a while. I saw that I was in a very huge cave. The top of the cave was at least 100 meters above the ground, and there were also many stone Jinchuriki columns surrounding the cave directly running through this cave. The coiled serpent, at the top of these stone Jinchuriki column, is a bright oil lamp, illuminating the cave slightly. I don't know who opened up a cave with such a vast space. Naruto thought to himself. And Wan Shi spit out Naruto and cursed. You bastard, you haven't been digested by me yet. Naruto's body is now dirty with the body fluids of Wan Snake. Facing Wan Snake's scolding, he ignored it. He directly found a small pool nearby and jumped into it. After a little cleaning, he walked out as if nothing had happened. At this time, the surrounding snakes had already discovered the human being who had entered through myriad snakes, and they rushed over, spitting out snake letters curiously at Naruto. Boss Wan Shi, why did you bring this guy in? Yeah, he doesn't seem to have signed a contract with our family. Ah, is he an intruder? Let's eat him together. All of a sudden there was a lot of chatter around. Naruto's head is big, but after all, this is the domain of other people. Although the strength of these big snakes is the most powerful, there is still a white snake immortal, and there must be other masters here, so he did not show it. Very high profile, just smiled. Everyone, I came here uninvited. I want to meet the white snake immortal. I hope you can take me there. This guy wants to see the great white snake. As soon as Naruto finished speaking, a voice sounded. No, what are you? Can you also see the great white snake? Naruto sighed. The snakes of Raichi Cave don't look as easy to get along with as the toads of Mount Myoboku. Just when he was thinking about how to convince these guys to take him to see the white snake immortal, a distant and vicissitudes of life sounded. Bring him here. It's the great immortal white snake. The great immortal white snake actually wants to see him. All the snakes felt incredible. But they couldn't go against the words of the great immortal white snake, so they had to let Naruto be brought to meet him by 10,000 snakes. Naruto stood on top of 10,000 snakes' head, and 10,000 snake leapt forward quickly. After crossing a distance of hundreds of kilometers, Naruto finally saw the end of the cave. I saw at the end, a sitting bed larger than the seat of Mount Myoboku, a large white snake with white scales, wearing a double-horned hat and a cigarette pipe in its mouth. On the rock above the head are the 3 characters of Raichi Cave. And his long body took up a large part of the place just squatting, which shows how long he was when he stretched out. Seeing this, Naruto felt a lot of novelty in his heart, but the basic etiquette did not fall. He stepped forward and said with a smile, Immortal White Snake, I have long admired your name, I came here to see you. Immortal White Snake looked indifferent, glanced at him, a gleam flashed in his eyes, and said calmly with a cigarette in his mouth, You came to learn sage art from our clan. Chapter 150 Make up your mind. Naruto didn't expect that the great immortal white snake already knew his purpose, and he suddenly froze in his heart and said, I'm here for this, I wonder if I'm lucky enough to learn sage art. After Naruto spoke, the great immortal white snake was silent for a while, took a few puffs of cigarettes, but did not speak. At this moment, Wan Shi suddenly stepped forward and shouted, Da Shanran, sage art must not be taught to this kid. He is from Mount Myoboku, he must be trying to steal our sage art. The boy succeeded. What you said is true. Great immortal white snake frowned, looking at Wan Shi said. Yeah, he has already colluded with the stinky toads of Mount Myoboku. We must not be deceived by him. According to me, we should take him down. Wan Snake twisted the huge snake body and stared at a pair of big lantern eyes shouted. Okay, I have my own discretion, Wan Shi, you go down first. The white snake nodded, drinking back Wan Shi, and looking at Naruto, his eyes became a little unkind. Since you are from Mount Myoboku, why did you come to learn the sage art of my white snake? He said lightly. Naruto was told by Wan Snake that he was ready for a battle or retreat. Unexpectedly, the white snake immortal did not immediately do something to himself, and he secretly thought that he had a play, so he said, although I don't know that Urayachi Cave and Mount Myoboku have a relationship. What kind of grievances, but I have no choice. I already have some of your Urayachi Cave sage art power, so my body is very repulsive of other types of immortal power, unable to practice Mount Myoboku sage art. That's why I thought to learn Urayachi Cave's sage art. Oh, so that's what happened. The great white snake's eyes flashed. Let me see your immortal power. Naruto released the immortal power of the curse seal according to the words, and suddenly a huge chakra scattered. Even the white snake immortal could not help but be moved slightly. What a strong chakra power. He looked at Naruto with a slight change in his eyes, and secretly thought about it. He didn't expect this kid to achieve such an achievement at such a young age. After a while, Naruto withdrew his power, and the great white snake frowned and said, "Your power does have the power of my Urayachi Cave's sage art, but I'm afraid you won't be able to cultivate my sage art either." Why? Naruto was startled and hurriedly asked. I have the sage art power of Urayachi Cave on me, how could I not be able to cultivate your sage art? White Snake Immortal suddenly sighed. Indeed, your power comes from our Urayachi Cave, but now these powers have become part of your body. After so many uses, the nature of these powers has become the same as our Urayachi Cave's immortal power. The difference is getting bigger and bigger. It can be said that this power has become a unique immortal power, and most of its properties have been transformed into the same properties as you, so even if it is our white snake sage art, you the body will still reject it. Quote. After a pause, Immortal White Snake suddenly looked very interested, looked at Naruto and said, as far as I know, no one has ever been able to blend sage art and himself so closely. Your body seems to be there are so many secrets. Naruto was stunned for a while. He has always had doubts about his ability to use the power of the curse seal for his own use, and that he was so handy. He knew that this must be the reason for his own constitution, but he didn't know why this happened. Now I listen to the white snake. When the great immortal said this, he immediately fell into contemplation. And just when he was stunned, the white snake great immortal said again, sage art is actually the same root, as long as you can grasp its essence, even if you don't have my white snake sage art. Naruto was shocked, and the words of the great white snake made him suddenly realize that sage art was originally from the same origin, and the great toad immortal also said this. Since the power of sage art comes from nature, why do you have to be attached to other people's sage art? Moreover, even the white snake immortal now says that he cannot cultivate his sage art, so he can only comprehend and explore a new sage art theory by himself. Thinking of this, Naruto made up his mind to create a set of sage art by himself. A set of your own sage art. Immortal White Snake, thank you for your guidance, I'm leaving now. Naruto figured out a key point and couldn't help showing a smile on his face. Boy, why do you come to Urayachi Cave when you want, and leave when you want to leave? Before the white snake immortal could speak, one snake, who was standing behind him, jumped up and said angrily. Naruto frowned, secretly saying that the 10,000 snakes' temper was too irritable. The white snake immortal hadn't spoken yet, so this guy started shouting. He said indifferently, then what do you want? As he spoke, a powerful chakra aura emanated from his body, which immediately overwhelmed the aura of one snake. However, he also took into account that this place is someone else's territory, and he is not too serious. He immediately closed his momentum, glanced at the white snake, and said, the white snake, the boy is just here to study and first sage art, there is no malicious intent. Doesn't mean Mount Myoboku, and you don't blame me, do you? The great white snake was still coiled there, smoking a cigarette. Naruto looked at him, but found that he was already asleep, and all his words were said in vain. At this time, Wan Shi on the side also saw that the great immortal fell asleep, and immediately laughed. Boy, the great immortal is hibernating, let's see how we kill you. Naruto couldn't help but be speechless, looking at the white snake big immortal who was still smoking with his eyes closed. This was obviously intentional. He took another look at the group of snakes around him, all looking forward, and he couldn't help shaking his head. In terms of strength, you are not my opponents. I advise you not to waste your energy. Naruto shook his head. Humph. The great immortal white snake doesn't care about you, but it doesn't mean we let you go like this. The guys from Mount Myoboku trespassed on our territory, this is something that can never be forgiven. Wan Shi shouted, and there was a kind of snake around. Classes are also attached. At this time, outside, Orochimaru and Kabuto were both laughing secretly. Knowing what happened, Kabuto laughed and said, Uzumaki Naruto really has no brains, he dares to break into Raichi Cave alone, if no one takes him out there, I think he will stay in it for the rest of his life. He will be eaten by them. Sooner or later. Orochimaru smiled slightly, does he think sage art is so easy to learn? I also went to pursue it for a long time, but in the end I didn't succeed. He couldn't even practice sage art in Mount Myoboku, let alone Raichi Cave. The sage art is out. Quote. However, they did not know that Naruto was playing with a group of snakes in Raichi Cave at this time. Although there was a large group of snakes, at Naruto's speed, they couldn't touch his body at all, and whenever he stepped on when one snake was on its back, the attack of the other snake arrived, and the two snakes collided immediately, resulting in another internal struggle. Naruto stood upside down at the top of the Raichi Cave, folded his arms and watched a group of snakes beat each other with interest. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and the next moment his figure flashed, as if a golden light disappeared in place. It was only then that the great immortal white snake, who was sleeping with his eyes closed, opened his eyes with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Chapter 151 People Jinchuriki, Column Force Alliance. The Art of Hiraishin. Orochimaru alone, and followed the snakes into Raichi Cave, facing the scene of the group of snakes dancing without any change. The technique of Hiraishin, in a sense, left Naruto an undefeated way back. He is now more and more admired that the fourth generation of Hokage can create this technique. In an instant, Naruto had appeared thousands of miles away, and on the way to the secret place, he had already set a space marker in a safe place. At this moment, although he did not come into contact with the sage art of Raichi Cave, he felt that the great immortal white snake should not deceive himself. If he was really hostile to himself, he would never talk to himself so much with his power. He must have turned his face long ago. Of view, although there is some kind of contradiction between Mount Myoboku and Raichi Cave, it seems that the leaders of these two areas are not very hostile, which makes Naruto guess, is that legend true? The Toad Immortal, the White Snake Immortal, and the Toad Immortal were once brothers. Thinking of this, Naruto smiled slightly, this world is far more exciting than the original book. After walking for a while, he began to think about how he should explore his own sage art. After thinking for a while, he found that unless he went to Itachi's Tsukuyomi space to experience it again, it would be really difficult to start. However, dealing with Itachi is not that easy. If you accidentally fall into Akatsuki's hands, you will lose more than you gain. After thinking about it, Naruto couldn't help but feel a little distressed. Although the ideal was very lofty, this feeling of having nowhere to start made him feel a little anxious. However, he soon calmed himself down and couldn't eat hot tofu in a hurry. What he has to do now is to consolidate his strength. For now, let's master all the techniques left to him by the 4 generations. After that, Naruto has been cultivating. Whenever he has grown in cultivation, he will do tasks and find a few people to practice his hands. After more than half a year, Naruto is 14 years old, and now he has grown a lot taller and his face looks more mature. At this moment, Naruto has become more adept at cultivating the technique of Hiraishin. He has now entered the second stage of cultivation, and he can reach the level of the 4th generation with just a little running in. Moreover, these days, he has been continuously cultivating Hiraishin, and his understanding of time and space techniques and enchantment techniques has become more transparent, and his progress in time and space ninjutsu has also been unprecedented. Not only Hiraishin has entered the second stage, and can also use the time-space transfer enchantment, with his huge amount of chakra, the enchantment he displays is also exceptionally strong. As for Jiraiya, because of Naruto's Hiraishin technique, he doesn't have to worry at all, and even now Jiraiya can't defeat Naruto. Once Naruto really had no opponent to look for, and finally found Jiraiya, and that one during the battle, Naruto directly forced Jiraiya to open the Sage Mode and summon two great immortals, but under Naruto's Hiraishin technique, he was still unable to defeat him. But Naruto can't help but get Jiraiya, because his Hiraishin technique has not been used to the level of perfection, otherwise even Jiraiya will definitely not be an opponent. That time, Jiraiya did his best, and he already knew most of Naruto's abilities. After that battle, Jiraiya was completely at ease with Naruto's strength. He said that he would never do it again. The new yellow flash in the ninja world, no. A golden miracle will appear. He was still the same person. Naruto was wearing a white cape, with Konoha forehead guards tied on his arms, and a black long sleeve set off his well-proportioned figure. His whole body was restrained, and he had a faint smile on his face. Kind. The strength has steadily entered the Kage level. Naruto, as a transmigrator, is ready to do something. Future conspiracies and disasters must be prepared as soon as possible. And to stop the masked man's Eye of the Moon plan, it is actually very simple, as long as one of them is protected, Jinchuriki column force, so that the masked man cannot collect all the tailed beast chakra. So, he is going to lobby all countries while training, so that all the Jinchuriki column forces can all form an alliance, help each other, grow each other, and prepare for Akatsuki's attack in the future. And the direction Naruto is going now is exactly where the Sand Ninja Village is located in the land of wind and sand filled with sand. Gaara is a Jinchuriki column force of one-tailed people, and he also had contact with himself at the time, so it is suitable to be the first to lobby him. After passing through the vast desert, Naruto finally came to the location of Sand Ninja Village. After the announcement, a Chunin brought him into the village. With Konoha, Sand Ninja Village is indeed very depressed. Although there are not many necessary facilities, it is far from the lively and prosperous Konoha village. Most people hide at home and do not want to go out to bear the wind and sand. Naruto followed Chunin to the guest house. Someone came to make him a cup of tea and asked him to wait for a while. Naruto didn't care either. He took the liberty to visit. It's just a small genin at the moment. It's not bad that Sand Ninja Village can do this, although the biggest reason for this is because they were defeated countries in the Konoha collapse plan, and their strength not to mention, he has signed many contracts with Konoha, and now he naturally dare not neglect Konoha's ninjas. After drinking a few sips of tea, Naruto heard footsteps coming, and a slight smile appeared on his face. The door was opened, and three familiar figures walked in. The one who took the lead was Gaara with short brown hair from Yuhi. Compared to a year ago, he was much more mature now. Although his face still had that indifferent expression, the rage in his eyes had subsided a lot. Beside him, stood his older brothers and sisters, Kankuro and Temari. The two of them haven't changed much. Kankuro is just a lot more burly, while Temari looks more mature, and his body is well developed. Naruto looked at them, and at the same time they were looking at them. Gaara was filled with emotion when he saw Naruto, because he could no longer observe Naruto's chakra fluctuations by his senses, which was enough that Naruto was far more powerful than him. Kankuro saw that Naruto had grown a lot taller, and he was also curious about how this guy's strength had changed. Temari looked at Naruto with a smile on his face. Naruto used to be half a head shorter than him, but now he has to look at him, and his face looks much more mature than before, with a smile on his face. More charming. I can't help but secretly think in my heart, this kid will also be a handsome guy in the future. Chapter 152 Windmill. Naruto, long time no see. Temari called out first. Although it is said that the two villages had fought before, but now they have reconciled, and Temari is also happy to be friends with people like Naruto. Gaara just nodded to him lightly, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and Kankuro also greeted him. The meeting between the two parties seemed very friendly, completely different from the arrogance when they met before. Naruto couldn't help but sigh, these people have grown up too. Next, a few people started to chat. In fact, most of them were Temari and Naruto chatting. Gaara didn't like to talk too much, and Kankuro didn't talk much, so it seemed that only Tamari was entertaining Naruto in the room. Naruto didn't care, and after a few words, he explained his intention to them. Tamari Kankuro turned their attention to Gaara after hearing this. After being stunned, Gaara said, "Naruto, I want to know why you formed the Jinchuriki Column Force alliance of this person." Naruto pondered for a while, then said, "To tell you the truth, in fact, I have discovered an evil organization in the ninja world. Each of them has the strength of a Kage-level powerhouse, and their goal is exactly us. These people Jinchuriki Column Force." Quote. Before Naruto finished speaking, Tamari whispered, "Is this true? Isn't Gaara and you very dangerous?" There was a trace of worry in her eyes, and she looked at Naruto and said, "Have you fought them before?" "Already." Naruto nodded. "Well, they are very strong. If it is the Jinchuriki Column Force alone, it is definitely not their opponent. That's why I want to form this alliance. Let us all the Jinchuriki Column Force unite to fight against that organize." The three of them were shocked by Naruto's words. They didn't expect such a powerful organization to exist in this world. Such an organization can't even compete with the power of a village, so let alone the power of Jinchuriki Column. It's just that Naruto's words are too unbelievable, and I'm afraid no one will believe it. The three Tamari naturally had doubts in their hearts, but Gaara nodded and believed Naruto's words. "Naruto, I agree with your idea. I'll join." Kankuro said, "No, Gaara, this matter is too important, and the senior members of the village must be informed about Akatsuki." Gaara glanced at him and frowned. Kankuro could not help shrinking his neck, not daring to speak any more. Tamari was looking at Naruto, thinking in his heart, is what this guy said true? Maybe this is just a plan by Konoha for the Sand Ninja Village. But immediately, she shook her head, cast aside her doubts, and thought to herself, if Naruto really had unfavorable thoughts on Gaara, he could have killed him directly in Konoha at that time. Why do you want to now? Thinking of this, she already believed Naruto's words in her heart, and she was a little embarrassed for her suspicions just now. With a smile on her face, "Naruto, although I believe in you, but you have no evidence, you can't get the consent of the villagers." Naruto frowned when he heard the words. At that time, the Sand Ninja Village believed that Akatsuki's existence was due to the information of Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, and the abnormality of other ninja villagers' Jinchuriki Column, so he believed it, but now Akatsuki has not yet acted, and although he is the sixth-generation heir, his reputation is far less than that of Sannin, and his words are not enough to win the trust of others. This can be a bit of a hassle. However, after thinking about it for a while, Naruto showed a relieved smile on his face. "It doesn't matter, this Jinchuriki Column Force alliance was established between our people, Jinchuriki Column Force. I don't think it needs to be recognized by the village. Now I just have this idea. As long as you agree to Gaara, take this. In the future, once you are in danger, enter chakra into it, and I can feel it and come to save you. This is based on me. The sponsor's welfare for you members." With that, Naruto handed him a special Hiraishin kunai, which Gaara took. Several people were curious when they saw this kunai. With their knowledge, they still couldn't recognize the mystery of this kunai. Naruto smiled slightly. He could not help but breathe a sigh of relief after solving a matter so easily, and he was even more optimistic about the future prospects. Next, after a few chats, Gaara went to practice, and Kankuro was called out, leaving Tamari and Naruto alone in the room. Being bored, Tamari proposed to take Naruto around the village to appreciate the local customs of Sandin Village. Although Naruto didn't like the environment of Sand Ninja Village very much in his heart, he had no choice but to agree to Tamari's invitation. The two went out and came to the street. Tamari kept introducing him to the surrounding environment, shops, and some interesting things. Naruto also felt very fresh. He walked along with her introduction. Suddenly, he saw a shop selling windmills on the street. Several children were walking around a small windmill, and they looked very happy. Tamari noticed Naruto's gaze and couldn't help but smile. "This is a windmill, almost all of our children in Sandin Village played with this when they were young." Naruto nodded and smiled. Of course he knew this. He also played in his previous life when he was a child, and they were all windmills made by himself. Thinking of this, a warm smile appeared on his face. Temari couldn't help staring at it for a while. She only felt that Naruto was so gentle and charming at this time. That smile was like a light that made it difficult for her to look directly. At this time, a gust of wind hit, and the windmill in a child's hand was blown out, and it fell right next to Naruto. Naruto picked it up, but found that the windmill had been scattered, and he restored it again. The windmill turned again. Temari came back to his senses and couldn't help but sigh. Naruto, I didn't expect you to be a windmill. I can't believe it. I don't know what to think. Temari's face slightly yuhi, and suddenly said, is this windmill for me? Naruto was stunned, saw the bright smile on Temari's face, nodded and gave it to her. A flash of joy flashed in Temari's eyes. At this time, the child who had lost the windmill ran over and asked her for the windmill in his hand, but Temari directly took out the money and bought one for him, holding Naruto himself. The face of the windmill scent was full of smiles. Jonin Maki, who had been staring at the two in secret, saw this scene. His expression was slightly stunned, and then a knowing arc appeared at the corner of his mouth. But Naruto and the two didn't know that this small episode had become a big deal in the eyes of those with a heart. Chapter 153 Battle Shukaku. After walking around for a while, the two went to have a meal, and then Temari took Naruto to the guest house. After arranging for him to stay, he said goodbye and left. At night, Naruto was sitting on the bed practicing chakra. The moonlight outside the window came in through the screen, and he suddenly opened his eyes. At the next moment, the ground seemed to vibrate, and then, a sharp roar suddenly sounded. It broke the silence of the night. Naruto stood up at once, went to the window and looked out through the moonlight, his brows furrowed. What's going on? Why did Gaara suddenly go berserk? Naruto looked around, and saw the huge Shukaku appearing in the residential area not far away. He was roaring frantically, his arms constantly slapped the surrounding buildings. The sirens sounded one after another, and at the same time, sand ninjas and Anbu also dispatched one after another. Maki first stood on the Cage building and directed the actions of the ninjas. The evacuated ninjas are also carrying out the evacuation work in an orderly manner. Naruto's side was still some distance away from Shukaku, so he wasn't affected, but from a distance he saw Temari leap towards him. Naruto opened the window, jumped out, met her, and asked, "What's wrong? How could Gaara go berserk?" Temari didn't have time to answer his words, and immediately said, "Naruto, you should go to other places to hide first, and leave Gaara's affairs to our village." When Naruto heard the words, he looked at the group of ninjas who were fighting hard over there. It was obvious that there was nothing he could do with Shukaku, so he frowned and said, "No, I'd better go and have a look." Temari looked embarrassed, and finally bit Kiba and said, "Okay, you stopped Gaara once, but this time you can." She was a little worried, because after all, this is the internal affairs of the village. Naruto belongs to Konoha village. In Konoha village, it is difficult to participate without the permission of the upper management, but I believe that as long as you have your own guarantee, there should be no problem. The next moment, the two rushed to Shukaku immediately. At this time, the battle scene was very intense. The ninjas of Sand Ninja Village kept trying to control Shukaku's movements with various chains, but they were all broken by Shukaku, and those mixed up exploded. After Fuzukuni flew past, even if it exploded, it still couldn't cause substantial damage to Shukaku. And Shukaku was also annoyed by the crowd's attack at this time. He spotted a group of ninjas and opened his mouth to extract a huge wind bomb. It is futon wind style to practice empty bombs. Boom! The air was violently compressed, and the huge wind pressure brought a gust of sand, and the ninjas did not dare to face the attack of Shukaku, and they all avoided it. But the huge wind bomb still smashed into a building, smashing a large building into pieces. Next, Shukaku launched the futon wind style attack again, and the surroundings were destroyed for a while, and Maki and Jonan were suddenly helpless. Temari couldn't stand it any longer, and rushed out first, holding a big fan in his hand and slamming it towards Shukaku, and suddenly a gust of wind swept away and surrounded Shukaku. It is futon wind style, Scythe Itachi. However, this move obviously had little effect on Shukaku. Although Shukaku was blocked and could no longer attack, he quickly resisted Temari's ninjutsu, opened his mouth wide, and faced the place where Temari was. The training bullet that was compressed to the ultimate was blasted out. Temari couldn't dodge for a while, and she couldn't help showing a panicked look on her face. At this time, Naruto, who was beside her, took a step forward, stretched her hand forward, slightly opened her palm, and suddenly a circle with a diameter of more than 2 meters was formed. A spiral wall formed, blocking Temari and himself. Boom! The huge force of the empty bomb suddenly slammed on Naruto's spiral protective wall. Naruto's body shook, and a huge impact force came from his hand, but his body remained motionless, and the powerful chakra maintained the spiral protective wall. The empty bombs are raging wildly, and a huge dirt pit has been blasted out of the place. But the two people behind the spiral wall were safe and sound, and when the power of the empty bombs dissipated, the figures of the two were revealed. All the ninjas around were secretly shocked. This blonde boy actually blocked Shukaku's attack. Incredible. Temari was saved by him once, and a grateful look appeared on his face. But at this time Shukaku saw clearly that it was Naruto, and suddenly shouted, "So it's you, stinky bastard. I must kill you." After speaking, Shukaku shouted, raised his head and suddenly gathered a powerful chakra energy in his mouth. Naruto frowned slightly. "This is a tailed beast bullet. I didn't expect Shukaku to use tailed beast bullets to deal with him. It seems that he was very upset by his violent beating last time." When all the ninjas around saw this, they were all shocked. Maki secretly said that it was bad, and hurriedly ordered all the ninjas to retreat and prepare to defend against ninjutsu. However, just when Shukaku was in the middle of condensing chakra, Naruto suddenly hand seal, spirituality overwhelming street vendor. The next moment, a large toad suddenly appeared over Shukaku, and fell towards Shukaku's head with a mighty force. Boom! A loud bang, Shukaku was seated under the toad on the spot, and the half-condensed chakra ball in his mouth fell out, and it exploded with a bang, blasting a big hole directly beside him, with firelight, smoke and dust everywhere. Diffuse. Naruto's figure flashed, and immediately jumped over the head of the big toad. He laughed and said, "Wenta, is the butt blooming? You stinky brat, do you know that this is very dangerous? If it wasn't for me sitting just right, my butt would have been blasted by his tail beast bomb." Wentai shouted angrily. "Hee, I'm sorry." Naruto hurriedly apologized. Toad Wenta snorted twice and left Shukaku. At this time, Shukaku was already roaring loudly and angrily. When he saw Empress Wen, he immediately saw Yuhi as his enemy. "It's you two bastards again." Shukaku roared and waved his arm violently, and suddenly a violent wind and sand rose up, as if a tornado swept forward. Wentai hurriedly spewed a water cannon, blocking part of the wind and sand, and jumped back vigorously to avoid most of the wind and waves, and then drew his knife and looked at Shukaku. However, at this time, Shukaku had already taken this opportunity to condense a tailed beast bullet again. This tailed beast bullet was even bigger than the previous one, about the size of his head. Such a large tailed beast bomb, which contains chakra, is known to be very terrifying. For a time, everyone in Sand Ninja Village became nervous. And Maki and other senior executives also felt that the development of things could not be controlled. However, in the face of this tailed beast bullet, Naruto said to himself a little excitedly, "Good job. Just in time to try the time-space enchantment technique I just learned." Chapter 154 Marky's Conspiracy. Time and Space Enchantment. I saw Naruto quickly hand seal with both hands, and in one breath, the seal was completed. The next moment, the tailed beast bomb with huge power slammed towards Naruto and the two of them, carrying the power to destroy everything along the way, and everything they passed became a smooth road. At this time, Naruto's space barrier has also been opened. Invisibly, when the black chakra sphere came to 12 meters in front of Naruto and Temari, it seemed to hit an invisible wall. At that moment, the black energy ball suddenly disappeared from the invisible wall, as if it was embedded in an invisible net. After a few seconds, the heavy pressure in the air suddenly disappeared, and everyone could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. The next moment, a loud noise suddenly came from somewhere outside the Sharon village, and then the whole ground couldn't help shaking, and everyone looked around. Looking at it, I saw a huge fire in the desert outside Shanon village, covering the sky and the sun. What kind of technique is this? The crisis was resolved in the blink of an eye, and this magical scene made some shallow ninjas stunned. Can you tell me what ninjutsu he used? Why did Shukaku's attack disappear? How do I know? Ask him if you have the ability. Let's forget it. When the ninja saw the graceful figure standing on the back of the toad, he immediately felt unattainable and said subconsciously. And Maki, who saw this scene not far away, was deeply shocked, and muttered to himself, I didn't expect that the most profound time and space ninjutsu was also mastered by him. How old is he? Ah, such an achievement. I really read it right. And Temari stood not far away, looking at Naruto fighting against Shukaku alone. His eyes were full of brilliance, and he almost shouted. But despite this, she was still excited to communicate with Yuhi, and could not wait to rush up to fight alongside him immediately. After Naruto used the time-space enchantment technique to transfer the tailed beast bomb, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. This technique was quite successful in actual combat for the first time. When Shukaku saw that the chakra that he had finally condensed was gone, he immediately jumped up in anger. Asshole! He jumped up at once, and rushed towards where Naruto was. When Tai had the opportunity to use it at this time, and a short knife slashed towards him fiercely. Shukaku waved his arms and lashed out at Bunta with sand while resisting. For a time, the toad and the tanuki were fighting so hard that the scene was extremely chaotic, and the surrounding ninjas could not intervene. At the same time, Naruto also established an extremely powerful impression in their hearts. Finally, just when Toad Wentai was getting tired, Naruto suddenly jumped up high, and at the same time, the magic seal immortal power on his body was activated, and the faint golden light appeared particularly dazzling in the night sky. The next moment, his palm turned to the sky, and a huge chakra ball suddenly condensed in his palm. It is 10 meters in diameter. The blue chakra was brighter than the moon in the sky, and Naruto held the huge Rasengan in one hand, looking down at Shukaku's wide eyes. Taste the power of this. Naruto snorted, his body slammed down, and a huge pop seemed to pass through the air. In the next instant, the blue chakra ball slammed into the huge Shukaku's body. Boom boom boom. A dazzling light emanated from Rasengan. Shukaku screamed, and his whole body suddenly rose from the ground, and was then smashed out by Rasengan's spiral energy. His huge body was spinning rapidly in midair, and the next moment he slammed into the city wall outside the village. With a bang, the entire earth wall cracked open, and huge dust and stone chips flew into the sky. The crowd fell into a long silence. The shock it brought to them tonight was too great. They had never seen someone who could fight a tailed beast in such a way. Naruto's figure with a faint golden light in midair is destined to be remembered. If it weren't for Naruto's not being a ninja from the village, they would have even cheered and hugged him. A bang, Toad Bunta returned to Mount Myoboku, and Naruto jumped in front of Temari. Temari just woke up from a dream, and looked at Naruto in confusion. It's resolved, Shukaku has been beaten back into him by me. Go and see Gaara. Naruto smiled at her. Temari's face was inexplicable Yuhi, and the originally calm heart suddenly thumped. It wasn't until Naruto reminded her again that she snorted and ran out in the direction of Gaara. Maki swung the surrounding Anbu away and let the other ninjas handle the aftermath of the scene. He came to Naruto to look at him, stretched out his hand and said, "Thank you so much this time, as expected of Konoha, 6th generation Hokage heir. The strength is really strong. Naruto stretched out his hand to shake him, nodded, accepted his thanks calmly, and suddenly asked, Gaara ran away so easily, what's going on? Maki's eyes flashed when he heard the words, and he laughed and said, it's not that Gaara's runaway happened before, but there were 4 generations of Kazekage at that time, and this is the first time after the death of the 4 generations of Kazekage. I don't know the specific reason, but we will investigate it well and never let this kind of thing happen again. Really? Naruto was keenly aware that there seemed to be something strange about this matter, because when he saw the rescue at the scene, he could not see any casualties of ordinary people, and the ninjas were only injured at most. In the face of the sudden outbreak of the tailed beast, how could there be no casualties? Hee, Naruto, you've worked hard too. I'll send someone to take you to take a rest. This time you have brought so much help to our sand ninja village. We will give you a big gift. Maki, after laughing and talking, he said that he had something to do and left here. At this time, a ninja came over and motioned Naruto to follow him. Naruto nodded, seeing the expression on the other's face full of awe and admiration. Enjoy this look of admiration and awe. After Naruto left, Maki came to a conference room, where the elders of the Sand Ninja Village had gathered. How is it? Did you see it? Maki said as he entered. Well, this child is indeed very strong. And his time-space ninjutsu, it is also very similar to Konoha's 4th generation Hokage back then. An elder nodded. Okay, in that case, that proposal is all right for everyone, right? Maki said with a smile after listening. No problem, although it is said that doing so will have some impact on the reputation of Sand Ninja Village, but for the future development, this is also a more stable method than a paper treaty. Another elder nodded and said. Then it's decided. Tomorrow I will send a letter to Konoha's 5th generation Hokage. Ask Konoha to agree. Maki nodded and laughed, secretly thinking, Tamari, as a teacher, I don't have any gifts for you. This is a nice gift. Chapter 155 4 Beasts. The next day, Naruto left the Sand Ninja Village, and Gaara had already replied, thanking Naruto for stopping his rampage. Leaving, Tamari kept holding him back, but Naruto left. Looking at Naruto's back disappearing at the end of the desert, Tamari was slightly lost. After returning to the village, Maki suddenly said that he wanted to talk to her. Tamari did not understand why, so he followed. A few days later, the Hokage office in Konoha village. Tsunade frowned as he looked at the mission document in his hand. After Naruto left Sand Ninja Village, he planned to go to Kumogakure village to persuade Irway and Killer Bee Jinchuriki column force. In his impression, Yao is a very reasonable person. Although he is very awkward at times, he believes that as long as he has a good talk with him, there will be absolutely no problem. With this in mind, Naruto set foot on the road to Kumogakure village, the land of thunder. On this day, he happened to pass by a small river beach, and something of concern suddenly appeared in his sight. Ice. White ice crystals. I saw a large area of ice crystals and debris around the river beach. Moreover, what makes Naruto more concerned is that there was obviously a battle here. This discovery suddenly reminded him of someone. Haku. Only with Hyoten ice-style Kekkei Genkei can she make so many ice crystals. He still clearly remembered how Bai left alone during the mission of the Land of Waves. Unexpectedly, today I actually let myself find her news again. Naruto was a little excited. I can't say why. Dialogue, a girl who has experienced ups and downs but has a very gentle personality, has a great impression on him. But seeing the messy scene around, Naruto frowned deeply. I am afraid that Bai has encountered a battle, and from the traces on the scene, a group of people besieged her. Obviously her situation is very dangerous. After a careful survey of the scene, Naruto found that the battle seemed to have just happened. That being said, she must not have gone far. I don't know if she fled with an injury or was taken away. Naruto was slightly anxious. However, Naruto's current perception is not strong, and it is still difficult to perceive the existence of Shiro. Therefore, he can only use the oldest method to separate hundreds of shadow clones on the scene and spread them out. Search in all directions with the fastest speed. This method is much slower than direct perception, but the search ability is definitely not bad. Naruto's body sat on the spot with his eyes closed and motionless. Suddenly, a message came from one of his clones. In the picture, I saw a few masked Anbu ninjas sitting in a forest resting with a girl in white in their hands. The next moment, his figure disappeared in place. In an instant, Naruto appeared at the place where Shadow Clone was, and there was a Hiraishin kunai stuck on the ground. All the Shadow Clones, Naruto turned his attention to the group of people in front of him. At this moment, due to his hidden position, he did not let those people find him. 3, 4, 5. There are 8 ninjas in total. Each has the strength of Jonin. Naruto observed it carefully for a while, and after determining the number and strength of the opponent, he turned his attention to Shiro, who was bound to death by their whole body. At this moment, Bai's pretty face was full of exhaustion. After more than a year, his well-developed body was tightly bound by ropes, and his hands were tied behind his back, but his whole person was more exquisite. Especially the pair of raised double peaks on the chest are more obvious. At this time, the masked Anbu were sitting around and resting, and suddenly some of them set their eyes on Bai, and one of the tall Anbu said, "Brothers, this girl looks like a not bad, in good shape, do we want to play first?" As soon as the man spoke, the other Anbu moved, but one of the female Anbu snorted, "Rogue. You can do such a thing. Are you still a ninja from Kurigakure village? Haha, anyway, bringing this girl back is a dead end. It doesn't matter if we big men have fun. It's a waste if we don't play." The man smiled. Other male Anbu, 3 nodded, while the other 3 stayed silent, ignoring his words. The tall Anbu looked at everyone's reactions, stood up and walked towards Bai. He said with a smile, "Those who don't want to play can avoid it for a while, I want to play first." "Who do you want? Play, it'll be your turn when I'm done." It looked like this man was the leader of them. The female Anbu scolded, "You beast, have you done this task?" But she didn't want that. Tall Anbu suddenly turned her head and glared at her, exuding a powerful aura. "Shut up. It's my business, and I'll be polite to you if you keep talking about it." The female Anbu was forced by the opponent's force, bit Kiba and finally turned and left. 3 other Anbu followed her away. Were only 3 Anbu and the leader left at the scene. After looking at each other, they all let out a hee-hee, laughing. Bai Zhao heard the conversations of several people, and wanted to call for help, but was immediately fed a pill by the leader. She stared at him with wide eyes and said anxiously, "What did you eat for me?" The leader laughed. "Of course it's a good thing. A good thing that will make you unable to help yourself later." When Bai heard it, his face suddenly turned pale, his body trembled, and tears were dripping in his heart. "Am I, Haku, going to be planted here today? If you don't kill the adults, it seems that I will come down to accompany you." "Leader, you go first, we'll take care of you." Although the other 3 Anbu were itching for it, in order to please the leader, they could only let him enjoy it first. But the leader smiled and said, "It's okay, such a beautiful girl, it's fun for the 4 of us to play. Besides, I gave her special medicine just now, I'm afraid I can't deal with her alone." Other 3 Anbu heard this, they immediately became lewd, laughed, and no longer cared about anything. They walked towards Bai together. At this moment, Bai, who had already been exhausted from fighting, was given this aphrodisiac again. At this moment, her body was weak and unable to move at all, and she felt a strong flame emerging from her body. It was as uncomfortable as if she was going to burn her whole body. Her face couldn't help but wet Yuhi, and her breathing became even more rapid. The 4 of them saw that Bai's originally pure and pretty face turned into a radiant Yuhi, and the incomparably beautiful appearance made them stunned for a while. P.S. The protagonist of the next chapter is going to be broken. The protagonist has more than 300,000 words to break. I'm really embarrassed. I want a reward. Haha. Chapter 156 Ahead. At this moment, the four people who were caught in the sea of lust did not notice at all, and the figure of Naruto appeared quietly behind them, holding a handful of Hiraishin kunai in their hands. Swish. When the sound of the sharp blade breaking through the air reached the ears of the four of them, they could feel the danger. The leader first came back to his senses, his face changed, his body immediately turned, and at the same time he took out his short knife and attacked the danger. Slashed where it came from. The other three reacted half a beat slower, and they only reacted when the leader turned around. What's wrong? The three of them turned around, but there seemed to be a flash of golden light in front of them. The next moment, the three of them suddenly felt a chill on their necks, and the pair of icy blue eyes in their sight gradually became clear, and then became blurred again. Boom, boom, boom. The three voices of the end of the human body sounded, and Naruto retracted his kunai, standing in front of the leader, looking at him with a stunned expression, holding the short knife but couldn't touch Naruto's body at all. You, who are you? The leader looked left and right, and found that all three of his subordinates had fallen to the ground, and blood spurted out from a deep scratch on his neck. He suppressed the fear in his heart and asked, "Why do you want to kill my people?" Naruto sneered, "Because you guys are damned bastards. Do you know who we are? We are the ninjas of the Kurigakure assassination unit." The leader didn't seem to understand the situation yet, and he shouted at him sternly. Naruto heard this. He laughed out loud. "Very good. As a Kurigakure assassination unit, you dare to do such a thing? That's even more damning." The leader was tall, but when faced with Naruto's angry look at the moment, the palm of his hand holding the short knife could not help but tremble slightly, because the strength Naruto showed just now was too strange, and his three subordinates unexpectedly unknowingly got killed. This kind of situation made him not dare to be careless at all, and at this time, even though Bai who was behind him was fed aphrodisiac and began to moan, he still did not dare to be careless. Naruto looked at him as if he was looking at a dead person. He glanced at the whites of his eyes and saw that her whole body was twisting involuntarily, and he kept shouting, "I'm so uncomfortable. It's so hot." Naruto was slightly anxious. His figure suddenly flashed, and a flash appeared behind the leader, and a blue Rasengan in his hand slammed towards him. The leader had some skills, and his reflexes were not bad. Naruto's frontal attack was better than not hitting him. Rasengan slammed directly on the ground under his feet, and with a loud bang, the ground suddenly burst into a big hole. Amidst the dust, the leader's body rolled a few somersaults on the ground, and then he stood up embarrassedly, looking at Naruto with a face full of horror. At this time, the other Anbu who had left finally noticed the change here and rushed towards this side. "Stop! Who are you?" The four of them suddenly saw the three companions who were in the end, and they were shocked. Although these people's actions against Bai were too scumbag, they couldn't let others kill them easily. But Naruto ignored the shouts of those people, smiled coldly, and suddenly threw three Hiraishin kunai, and shot straight towards the leader in the shape of a pin. The four of them were shocked. They didn't expect this blonde boy to be so arrogant. Immediately, they showed their ninjutsu and blasted towards him. Naruto didn't pay any attention, turned around quickly and picked up Shiro's body, and then at the next moment, when the four Anbu's attacks came, his figure suddenly disappeared. The art of Hiraishin. In an instant, he appeared in the three kunai who had just arrived in front of the Anbu leader. Big Ball Rasengan. At this time, the leader wanted to wave his knife to block these hidden weapons, but he did not expect that there was a golden light and shadow in the eye, followed by that blue chakra light. In danger, he jumped back in a hurry. However, before he jumped halfway, Naruto's Big Ball Rasengan suddenly expanded to a diameter of 1 meter. Boom! The next instant, Rasengan slammed onto the leader's body. His whole body was covered by the spiral energy, and his body was twisted into a ball for a moment. Spit. Naruto didn't even look at him. The next moment, he made a slight movement of condensing chakra with one hand, and his figure disappeared directly from the sight of the four Anbu. At this time, the four people were able to come back to their senses, and then went to see the leader in the pit, but once they found that his body had been twisted to such an extent that he couldn't die any longer. Who the hell is this person? Why is there such a mysterious speed? The female Anbu couldn't help but murmured. The situation is very strange, we must report to Lord Mizukage immediately. Another Anbu mused. Then what did they do? These guys, just find a place to bury them. Go back and talk about it. At this time, Naruto appeared in an uninhabited corner of the forest holding a Hiraishin technique. After killing a few Anbu, the anger in his heart also dissipated. At this time, facing the drugged Shiro, his face turned pale. Cannot help but hesitate. My body is only 14 years old now. It's not fully developed yet, but in Bai's situation, you have to find a man. After thinking about it, he finally bit Kiba, walked to the grass under a big tree, and put her body down gently. At this time, Bai had already seen the powerful face in front of him, and he couldn't help but groaned and asked, Naruto, Naruto. Are you, Naruto? Naruto nodded and touched her forehead, but found that it was extremely hot. His heart skipped a beat, and he finally decided to give it a try. This is his first time. This is the first time that the past and present lives are added together. Even in the face of Akatsuki's enemies, he had never looked so cautious and nervous. He untied the rope on Bai's body at once. After Bai's body was freed from the bondage, he suddenly threw Naruto to the ground. Before the rope on his body fell to the ground, her fiery body was already wrapped around like a snake. Come up. Bai, Naruto called out. Bai's originally pure big eyes were full of admiration at the moment. Naruto's voice made her movements even more crazy. Regardless of any concerns, her hands took the initiative, circling around Naruto's neck. His body unconsciously rubbed violently on his body. Feeling the hot and soft feeling of the opposite sex's body, Naruto also raised a desire and hope. Chapter 157 finally broke. Although Bai was only 16 or 17 years old, her body had already developed just right. While rubbing Naruto's body with her jerky and frenetic movements, she kept tearing at her clothes with both hands. Naruto looked at her with a very uncomfortable look, and depending on the situation, he might tear up all his clothes, so he reached out and helped her take off her clothes one by one. This aphrodisiac is really powerful, and Bai was consciously speaking just now. At this moment, such a pure and lovely girl has become extremely wild, groaning unconsciously in her mouth, rubbing her hands around, and her graceful body is also violently twisted. Right. When Naruto stripped all the clothes off her body, the beauty in front of him immediately caused him to be in a daze. The suet and white jade-like skin exuded a Kiba-like light, and there was a little perspiration on it. And the pink halo, trembling with the twist. Naruto's desire that had been immersed in his heart for many years finally burst out after seeing this scene. He could no longer care about anything. He took off his clothes and hugged her directly in his arms. The beauty was in her arms, and Naruto tightly clung to Bai's delicate body, squeezing the pair of strong, sturdy white rabbits in front of Bai's chest so much that they couldn't get through. And Shiro's hands finally caressed and danced freely on Naruto's back. Those weak and boneless hands gave Naruto a strange feeling of comfort. Naruto could feel that the temperature of Bai's body was constantly rising at this moment, and the burning feeling almost burned her whole body, and what made him collapse was that Bai's body was already muddy, dripping with crystal jade beads. It was already flooded, and at this moment, she was sitting on her thigh, and she actually wet a large amount of her thigh. However, Bai, who had never had such an experience, couldn't find any outlet at all. She twisted her body helplessly, moaning and demanding, and looking at Naruto, there was a hint of a gleam in her eyes. Sheer unparalleled desire. Naruto's body has long been as hard as iron at this moment, and it has begun to take shape, but Bai doesn't know what to do with himself. His upturned buttocks are constantly rubbing against Naruto's hardness, but no matter what. The insertion point could not be found. Naruto was also a rookie, but the arrow was on the string, so he had to send it. He suppressed the wild beating of his heart, and reached out to quietly support Bai's buttocks. Then, he slowly moved his hard things to her Taoyuan Valley. However, Bai's body kept twisting, which made it difficult for him, a rookie, to find the entrance. Subconsciously, he pushed forward, and the two of them simultaneously with a groan, Naruto couldn't help sweating profusely. Unexpectedly, I found the wrong position and stabbed her chrysanthemum. Fortunately, no stab in. Naruto couldn't help but hate himself. What a shame for the transmigrators. The next moment, he had to free one hand and slowly touch the place where the white stream Izumi was surging. When he started, he felt smooth and warm. He couldn't help but caressed it carefully. He found a small bump, of course he knew what it was, so he felt another narrow gap. Naruto was overjoyed, and quickly supported his hard object, facing the gap, slowly, a little bit, and pushed it in. First entry, warm and slippery. Entering a half, block, and exert a little force. With a puff, the whole root is in. Bai's delicate body suddenly stopped twisting. Her entire upper body slammed back, her cherry lips immediately turned into an O shape, and her hair kept flying in her mind. At the same time, Naruto suddenly felt that the tight and slippery land that was wrapping him suddenly contracted violently and wriggled, and a suction force from it seemed to eat his hard things, which made him feel a pleasure like never before. Blood, mixed with a little bit of white jade dew, it slowly overflowed from the intersection of the two and kept flowing onto the grass. Bai didn't seem to feel pain, and when her body was stunned, she immediately moved frantically. She found a vent, and she kept releasing the excitement and emotion in her body. For a time, Naruto was actually pressed to the ground. She spread her slender and white legs, and sat deeply on Naruto's hard body, her body crazily swaying up and down, swaying, and trembling. In her small mouth, the uncontrollable body fluid has quietly flowed down from the corner of the mouth to Naruto's chest, and her chest is firm, and it is also swinging wildly, spinning. Above Yufeng the two dots of Yan Yuhi, drawn a perfect circle arc in the air. Sweaty. Panting pee. The sound of water flooding. Passion burning. Naruto was driven by her enthusiasm, and involuntarily reached out and clasped the pair of firm, wanton kneading. Bai felt the pleasure in his chest, and even tried his best to straighten his chest to let his flawless double, Feng accepts Naruto's love and support. Bai's body is more tireless, and the ups and downs on Naruto are faster and more intense. Every collision will bring a burst of water and a crisp, pop, sound. Clap clap. I don't know how many times I hit it, and finally, Naruto couldn't hold back the first time pleasure, and all of his life essence was sprayed out at once. And Shiro, as if he wasn't satisfied, his body was still moving and craving. Naruto took a deep breath when he saw this. What the hell did Anbu eat for her? Doing so will kill people. However, Naruto's physical fitness is really strong, and after a while, under the stimulation of Shiro, it becomes hard again, even more than before. And this time, Naruto couldn't stand this passive appearance any longer. He sat up, wrapped his arms around Shiro's body, and then pressed her to the ground ruthlessly, and the bottom shook violently and quickly. Chi. In order to allow Bai to quickly dissipate this medicinal power, Naruto didn't care about anything, and continued to speed up his expedition. Sure enough, in a short time, Bai had reached the high point of bliss, opened his mouth, and let out a sound of ecstasy in his throat, the groaning into the bones, followed by holding Naruto with both hands tightly, and his legs tightly gripping Naruto's waist. The valley shrank for a while, twitching. Oh! Bai finally released her second passion. But then, under such a violent medicinal power, she had a third craving. Naruto has fallen into a state of ecstasy now. How can she manage whether she can bear it or not? His body is attacking her fiercely, only to feel that after seeing the expression on her face that is extremely enjoyable, all his efforts have turned into nothing. A sense of satisfaction and pleasure. Finally, Naruto's second time. Spit out. Chapter 158 Pier. A long time. The two of them collected clouds and rained away. Even with Naruto's physique, he couldn't help but feel a little tired, and Shiro had already passed out in extreme happiness. But fortunately, all her medicinal powers were released, and Naruto finally understood why that Anbu wanted 4 people together. This medicine is too powerful. If it weren't for his toughness and strength, I'm afraid it would be difficult to cope with it, right? Red, naked, Naruto hugged Bai's delicate body tightly. He gently covered her with his clothes, and lay on the spot waiting for her to wake up. The wind came slowly, bringing a trace of coolness. Naruto lay on the green grass and hugged Bai. The desire and hope in his heart slowly dissipated. He glanced at the pretty face curled up in his arms and couldn't help laughing. It was such a wonderful enjoyment that he got Bai's body by himself, and he felt that his trip was worthwhile. However, after thinking about it carefully, he couldn't help sighing slightly. Hinata, Sayu and others in Konoha flashed in his mind, thinking to himself, if they knew that they were already like this with Shiro, how would they react? Shaking his head, Naruto dispelled the distracting thoughts in his mind, exhaled slightly, stopped thinking about these things, and silently waited for Bai to wake up. In the evening, Bai Kai faintly woke up, and the first moment she opened her eyes, she saw Naruto's gentle face, but the next moment, she couldn't help but whispered and buried her head in Naruto. In his arms, he would never look up again. Because, she felt that her whole body was bare, and there was a faint numbness from below. Bai, Naruto called out and said, I didn't expect to see you under such circumstances, hee. Hearing Naruto's words, Shiro just nodded slightly, but buried his head even lower. And there was a burning sensation on her pretty face. Seeing her so shy, Naruto couldn't help recalling her crazy attitude just now. He couldn't help shaking his head, gently pushed her body away, and said softly, okay, Shiro, I'll take care of this matter. You will follow me from now on. Bai's body couldn't help but tremble slightly, but he turned his head away and didn't dare to look at him. His heart was extremely complicated. Did his own affairs cause trouble to Naruto? In order to save herself, he had such a relationship with herself, but he was only 14 years old, 2 years younger than him, yet he had to accept such a violent demand from her, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt in her heart. There was no anger in his heart that he was broken, but instead he cared about Naruto's feelings. Bai is too considerate, too gentle, and too considerate of others. Naruto didn't know what she was thinking. Seeing the way she pinned her head, she thought she didn't want to. She couldn't help but feel a huge sense of loss. But immediately, he had a paranoid thought in his heart. No, how can a woman who has already had a relationship with him let her go? The next moment, he suddenly reached out to hold Bai's pretty face. His blue eyes looked straight into her eyes, and said word by word, Bai, whether you want it or not, I will never let you leave me in this life. Bai was stunned for a while. She didn't expect Naruto to say such a thing. He was so domineering as before, but this domineering was deeply imprinted in her heart and could never be erased. Naruto. Bai was so moved that he could not help but let out a soft cry. Would you like to? Naruto asked again. Bai dared not stare into his eyes. Yuhi shyly nodded, and nodded quietly. Really? That's great. Naruto saw her nod, and immediately became happy, but then he said again, Bai, although we didn't have any emotional foundation before, but we will gradually cultivate it in the future. Hee, I already like you a little bit now. Hearing his direct words, Bai couldn't help but show a smile on his face. Naruto is also straightforward and cute sometimes. Moreover, how does he know that he has no emotional foundation? Bai secretly recalled how he enlightened her more than a year ago. At that time, Naruto's shadow was already imprinted in her heart. After persuading Bai, Naruto is in a good mood, and he has a wife for no reason, which is definitely a good thing. Naruto helped Bai to a small stream. After the two went in and cleaned the traces of madness, they put on their clothes and went to a nearby town together. Bai's sequelae finally came at the moment. She frowned and couldn't move. Naruto smiled, and without waiting for her consent, he carried him on his back. After Bai was stunned for a moment, he leaned on his back and smiled sweetly. The pain under his body became lighter and lighter at this moment, and his heart quietly flew up to the clouds. Naruto, so gentle. She thought happily. At the same time, she finally made clear her future. Following him and traveling all over the world is what she is all about. Soon, Naruto came to a town intersection, and Naruto put her down and helped her into the street. Bai felt a little lost in her heart. She really hoped that Naruto could carry her for the rest of her life. But she also knew that this unrealistic idea was too selfish. She shook her head, hugged his arm tightly, and followed him into the town. Naruto first took her to a restaurant, ordered a table of good dishes, and had a good meal with her. In a good mood, he had a big appetite, but Bai kept serving him dishes, his face full of gentle smiles. "You eat too, Shiro." Naruto saw that she didn't eat it, so he brought her a lot of vegetables. The smile on Bai's face became more gentle and charming. There was a warm atmosphere at the dinner table. But at this moment, Naruto suddenly noticed that there were two people quietly staring at him in the corner of the restaurant, and he couldn't help but raise his vigilance. "What's wrong?" Bai was keenly aware of the change in Naruto's eyes and asked with concern. Naruto smiled at her and couldn't help joking. "There are two guys with short eyes that seem to be staring at us. Is it because they see you are too beautiful, Shiro, and are coveting you?" Bai's face turned a Yuhi. I didn't expect Naruto to call Guy himself like this, and he was happy and helpless, so he gave him a sullen look, lowered his head and muttered, "Really, how can you say such a thing?" Naruto thought she was more cute, so he couldn't help pinching her pretty face with a smile. The taste of first love is so wonderful, it makes people addicted, and Naruto is deeply involved in it at this moment. Chapter 159 To the Land of Water. After the two had dinner, they left the place hand in hand, planning to find a hotel to rest for a night, and then go on the road tomorrow. When they came to a deserted alley, Naruto suddenly found that there was no road ahead. At this moment, a swish-swish suddenly came from behind, and the corners of Naruto's mouth twitched slightly. "Bai, these people really showed up," Naruto said to Bai next to him. Bai nodded, and the two turned around together, facing the group of figures. There were as many as 18. And on their faces, they are wearing animal masks. Anbu. "Is it Kurigakure-s ninja? Are you following me here for Shiro?" Naruto spoke first without waiting for them to speak. Those people looked at each other and looked surprised, because they didn't notice any expression of fear on Naruto's face at all. Surrounded by 18 elite ninjas on his side, he was so calm. This made them suddenly feel an invisible pressure. "Yes, we are members of the Kurigakure assassination squad. We came to arrest you on the orders of Mizukage-sama," one of the leading ninjas said in a deep voice. "Oh, arrest me? You Mizukage-sama are really in control. Didn't you see that I'm Konoha's ninja? It's not your turn to arrest me." Naruto smiled and said in a flat tone. "Humph, you killed the 4 of us ninjas, and you are the enemy of our Kurigakure village." The man snorted coldly. "Mizukage-sama let us capture you alive, and let us capture you without getting hurt." Naruto couldn't help laughing. "It's really funny. Shiro, these people are really sounding. I think it's just to catch you back." Bai Wenyan had a worried look on her face. "Naruto, there are so many of them, we'd better retreat." She felt a little guilt in her heart, for causing so much trouble to Naruto because of her own affairs. Now they have to face the pursuit of Kurigakure again. Naruto held her shoulders with a confident smile on his face. "Don't be afraid, with me here, no one will dare to bully you in the future. We don't have to run away from anyone." "What an arrogant kid. Let's go together," the leader shouted, and first rushed towards Naruto. Due to his physical inconvenience, Bai was unable to exert his full strength. At this time, he handed a hand seal and raised a high ice wall in front of the two of them. But with a bang, the next moment the ice wall was smashed by a group of ninjas. Seeing this, Naruto grabbed Shiro's waist and jumped back high. At the same time, his other hand quickly threw several kunai around him. At this time, seeing Naruto in the air, holding a person in his hand, a water dragon roared and jumped up immediately, rushing straight towards the two of them. Naruto stretched out his palm, and the spiral protective wall was instantly formed. With a loud bang, the water dragon hit the protective wall and was immediately bounced into a splash of water, which scattered down in the air. Suddenly, another powerful water whip attacked from behind Naruto. Naruto sensed the danger. He turned abruptly in midair, and the spiral wall immediately blocked the attack of the water whip. At this time, Naruto had already landed, and the 18 Anbu rushed up frantically and launched a rapid attack on the two of Naruto. Naruto smiled, his hands quickly hand seal. A futon wind style ninjutsu was formed instantly. Futon wind style wind blade dance. I saw that the space around Naruto suddenly gave birth to dozens of sharp invisible wind blades, and then blasted towards a group of people overwhelmingly. Feeling the power of these wind blades, the Anbu hurriedly stopped and used their defensive ninjutsu to resist his attack. For a time, everyone was suppressed by Naruto's ninjutsu. Seeing that Naruto had become so powerful after not seeing him for more than a year, Bai was very happy, and at the same time, he liked him even more. Naruto, I didn't expect your strength to improve so fast. Bai said with a smile. Not to be outdone, she simply handed the hand seal with one hand and used a ninjutsu, which immediately matched with Naruto's wind blade. Suddenly in midair another burst of ice arrows fell, and the two increased each other, which immediately put the Anbu's pressure on a lot. And the ice arrow passed. The Anbu were able to breathe, but after coming back to their senses, they suddenly saw a chakra energy ball with a diameter of more than 10 meters in their sight, and they were immediately stunned. What kind of ninjutsu is this? They swore that the ninja who condensed such a huge chakra in their hands had never seen it before. Even the power of a tailed beast was nothing more than that, right? Rasengan with a diameter of more than 10 meters, walked towards the crowd step by step, with a faint smile on his face. How is it? Do you still want to take us back? The leader swallowed his saliva, and his eyes were filled with fear. In the face of absolute power, even if he was a well-trained Anbu, he couldn't bear it anymore. Let's retreat. The leader suddenly waved his hand, leading a group of people to retreat directly. Naruto then dispersed Rasengan and sneered. The Anbu turned around and wanted to leave as if they had been granted amnesty. At this time, Naruto suddenly shouted, wait. Also, what else is there? After seeing Naruto's power, the leader Anbu wanted to leave this powerful and monster-like guy early, and he was stopped at this moment, and his body could not help but tremble. Naruto glanced at Bai and said, take me to meet your Mizukage-sama. Naruto. After seeing Naruto's strength, Bai was deeply shocked by him, but after hearing his words, he became a little worried. This is very dangerous. For me, you don't have to be like this. Naruto shook his head. If you don't solve this matter, it will be very troublesome in the future. Besides, I think Mr. Mizukage is not an unreasonable person, right? After Naruto finished speaking, he gave Anbu a playful look. The Anbu breathed a sigh of relief, but they didn't expect this kid to fall into the trap. At the village of Kurigakure, even if you have wings, it can make you fall. Okay, we'll take you to see Lord Mizukage. The leader nodded and said with a respectful tone. So, the next journey was Naruto following a group of Anbu to the land of water, and the Anbu was in awe of Naruto along the way, as if facing a tailed beast. Naruto didn't care about their gazes, and enjoyed the time with Bai on his own. It was as easy as traveling in the mountains and water, which made those Anbu's hearts envious. The world, and in the face of the impending danger, is so easy and reckless. How far does he have to cultivate to have his strength? Chapter 160 Shocking Remarks. Going to the land of water still requires a boat, but the Anbu's have already prepared the boat conditions, and the two of Naruto just need to get on the boat easily. On the boat, Shiro couldn't help but look worried. Naruto, isn't it a bit reckless for the two of us to go to Kurigakure village? Although you are very good, it is someone else's village. Naruto smiled mysteriously and said, don't worry, I just went to negotiate with Mizukage. Even if the negotiation breaks down, I will have my own way to escape. Bai glanced at him suspiciously, but out of her trust in him, she finally smiled. Well, Naruto, I believe in you. Naruto was stunned for a while, and Bai's smile was so gentle and soothing, so beautiful that it was almost bubbling. He had tasted love for the first time, and now he could hardly help hugging her and kissing her a few times. If it weren't for the fact that the ship was full of Anbu, he would have held her in his arms and loved her. Bai was embarrassed by his scorching eyes, his face was covered with dizziness, and he lowered his head and dared not look at him. Naruto was unbearably itchy, and while the people around him were not paying attention, he leaned in and kissed her tender white cheek. Bai was startled, looked around, and found that no one was paying attention to this side, so he gave him a strange look, but his heart was even more joyful. A day later, the ship arrived at Kurigakure village, the land of water. This village is always shrouded in fog. With a hint of mystery, Naruto followed the Anbu directly into the village. Along the way, people kept pointing at the two of them. Look, the ninjas of Konoha actually said that our village of Kurigakure is here. Really, but our village has always refused to communicate with other villages. The guys from Konoha dare to come to our village. I think he must have done something and was caught by Anbu from our village. Didn't you see that the woman beside him was missing of Kurigakure? Since Bai followed Zaibushin around the ninja world, since Zaibushin died, she has inherited Zaibushin's missing status and drew a horizontal bar on the original Kurigakure forehead. Naruto walked into the Mizukage office building with his head held high, ignoring the surrounding discussions. Turn a blind eye to a group of ninjas and villagers in the village of Kurigakure, who are eyeing them. In Mizukage's office, a coquettish and charming woman was looking at Naruto below through the window, her brows slightly wrinkled. What is the 6th generation Hokage heir of Konoha village doing here? The one next to him is Haku. At this time, an Anbu voice came. Mizukage-sama, someone is asking to see you. The 5th generation Mizukage Terumi-mei smiled lightly, and the corner of his mouth showed an interesting arc. Bring them in. Walked into the office surrounded by a few Anbu. This Mizukage office looks similar to Hokage's, and compared to Hokage's office, where you can look directly at the village shrouded in white mist through the window, it is even more beautiful. When Terumi-mei saw Naruto walk in, she first looked at the room for herself. She couldn't help but stun for a moment, then she laughed lightly and said to Guy, "Who am I talking about?" It turned out to be Konoha village. The 6th generation of Hokage. I wonder what is the matter with your visit to Kurigakure village. Bai, who is next to Naruto, was taken aback when he heard Terumi-mei's words. Naruto is actually the 6th generation Hokage. Why haven't I heard that Hokage in Konoha village has reached its 6th generation? It's not too bad to say this after 3 years, but it's too early to say it now. Naruto smiled and said, as the 5th generation of Mizukage, don't you even know what I'm here for? He glanced at Bai. Bai only understood after listening to the conversation between the two, but when he thought that Naruto was actually a candidate for Hokage, he was filled with admiration and joy. I didn't expect him to be younger than me, to have such an achievement. Terumi-mei also saw Shiro, but found Shiro standing beside Naruto, with an expression of only his arrogance, raised his brows, smiled and said to Bai, "Shiro, as a descendant of the Kurigakure Mizutsuki family, he is a shouldn't it be time to return to the village? Now the village no longer hates Kekkei Genkei, you can get the best treatment and development here, and it is not impossible to revive the Shuiwayu clan in the future." Naruto didn't expect this woman to throw an olive branch in the dialogue, and she couldn't help showing a strange look on her face. Didn't those Anbu want to kill her before? But want to bring her back? But the attitude of those Anbu was obviously different. "Sorry, Mizukage-sama, Shiro has followed me now, I'm afraid I can't go back to Kurigakure village again." Naruto said lightly, besides, Anbu from Kurigakure village wanted to tarnish Shiro's innocence. If such a thing happened, even Shiro willing to return to the village, I will never give her to you. What? Terumi-mei's face was startled. You said that Anbu from Kurigakure village is going to defile her. Naruto nodded and held Shiro's hand. Before Terumi-mei could speak, his tone suddenly changed and he said firmly, "So, I came to see you in Kurigakure village this time, just to remind you that Shiro is mine now." Woman. No one is allowed to attack her in the future. Otherwise, as the heir of the 6th generation of Hokage, I will challenge your shinobi village. Everyone was shocked, including Terumi-Mei and Shiro. All the ninjas in the office looked at him with shocked eyes. What did this guy just say? Did he say war? Just for one woman? Looking at Naruto's serious expression, Terumi-Mei has no doubt that if he doesn't agree to him, after he becomes the 6th Hokage, his village will face the challenge of the entire Konoha. Unexpectedly, this kid actually threatened himself with war. What kind of arrogance is this? What a kind of tenderness. Terumi-Mei, a woman, couldn't help but deeply envy the girl beside him at this moment. How blessed it is to have a man who loves her so much. And Bai, who was moved to tears at this moment, his body could not help shaking with excitement, and the eyes looking at Naruto were full of obsession. If she just had a great affection for Naruto before, now she has completely fallen in love with him. Terumi-Mei looked at him deeply, and it took a long time to come back to her senses. She shook her head and smiled bitterly. Whether you believe it or not, I never thought of hurting Shiro, and as for the things you said, it's not what I ordered. I just sent 18 Anbu to investigate and follow you. The reason is that you killed 4 of our Anbu. But now it seems that there is still another hidden meaning in this matter. Speaking of this, she has begun to agree with Ming-Ming. Humans and whites. But because of her identity as Mizukage, she couldn't admit her mistake for a while. Soon as she finished speaking, a female Anbu suddenly came to her ear and whispered a few words. Terumi-Mei's face changed, and a pair of beautiful eyebrows immediately wrinkled.